2018 has already gone through the first reading. Uh, According to the order of business this morning, it appears in that particular order, order number 12 to be exact, and that particular bill will be read for the second time if at all the members are able to handle and complete the other businesses appearing on the order paper this morning. The principal objective of this particular bill is to amend Articles 101, subsection 1, Article 136, subsection 2A, Article 177, subsection 1A, and Article 180, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Kenya by changing the existing date for the general election for members of parliament, the president, member of county assembly, and the county governors and deputy county governors from second Tuesday of August in every fifth year to third Monday. Member for Kiminini constituency, Chris Omalo. The amendment is to ensure that the date of elections reflects unique circumstances and tradition of Kenya. The honourable member argues the current date for the general elections unduly disrupts the education calendar and, most importantly, the conduction of national examination in case of either fresh election or a runoff or an invalidation of a presidential election. The member also argues that the tradition of reading the budget concurrently in East Africa has been disrupted by current election date. So the amendment seeks to restore the tourism high season and the aspirations of a section of Kenyans who are not able to get time out of their busy schedules to take part in the general elections at their places of preference. The amendment will also clarify and put to rest all doubts regarding the exact date of the next general elections and the term of the current parliament. The bill does not delegate legislative powers, nor does it limit fundamental rights and freedoms. It affects, though, the functions of the county governments and is therefore a bill concerning counties for purposes of the standing orders. The bill is a money bill for the purposes of Article 114 of the Constitution, as the enactment of this bill will occasion additional expenditure of public funds. This particular bill has been authored by a member of parliament for Kiminini constituency, Chris Omalo. The Honourable Member of Parliament, Honourable Owen Bayer, will move a motion seeking the revival of the cashew nut sub-sector in Kenya. The member argues that aware that agriculture is the mainstay of the Kenyan economy, contributing to food security and employment of rural households, further aware that cashew nuts are mainly grown in the coast region of Kenya, producing about 10,000 metric tons of the nuts valued at 264.9 million Kenyan shillings, recognizing that Kenya has a potential to produce more than 63,000 metric tons valued at over 1 billion shillings, noting that the subsector has the potential to create many employment opportunities through value addition and fetch the exchequer millions of shillings through exports. The member is deeply concerned that cashew nuts farming in Kenya has continued to face key challenges, among them low producer prices, which has seen many farmers cut down their trees, appreciating that Kilifi, a region at the coast of Kenya, used to be a major producer of cashew nuts in the 1980s, but the production has since dwindled, which led to, among other things, the fraudulent sale of Kilifi cashew nuts factory, loss of livelihood for the farmers, and subsequently increased poverty levels. This House urges the government to put in place measures to revive the cashew nuts industry in the country. That particular motion will be moved by the Honourable Member Owen Bayer. The other motion in the order of business this morning is the prioritizing of recruitment of NYS graduates into the disciplined forces. This particular motion will be moved by the Honorable Member Michael Mushira. The member argues that aware that the National Youth Service is a government department established by an Act of Parliament, Cap 208, Laws of Kenya, whose vision is to catalyze transformation or transformative youth empowerment in Kenya. Further, Tuesday of August in every 5th year to 3rd Monday in December in every 5th year. The bill seeks to introduce a new date for conducting a general election that will be more favorable to Kenya's circumstances. This is according to the Honorable Member.
Is it south or somewhere? Who also is Muhammad Ali, like Muhammad Ali of Jichopevu again, of the other side. I do not know whether we are starting to place them as Muhammad Ali 1 and Muhammad Ali 2, and Ali Wario 1 and Ali Wario 2, or Ali Wario tall and Ali Wario short. And then there is even a Duale now, and that is even more serious, because there is a Dr. Duale and there is another Duale and there is even another Duale also. So I think members, for purposes of making it clear, because like you noticed, when I noticed there was a Honorable Wario going to give a petition, I looked at where the taller Wario normally sits. But be that as it may, let me give about 2 or 3 members to maybe give some input into that. Let's see. Let's start with the leader of majority, then I come to Honorable Wandai. I do not see the leader of minority interested in this, so let's go to Wandai after that. But if he is, we will consider.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to support and thank Honorable Wario. This Wario, the Speaker, has a very long history. He has been the spanner boy of Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka for many years. He has been a member of that party, and he tried. The Speaker, you know, Honorable, the nominated member of Wiper, wants to confirm
that
to his party that he's working. There's nothing out of order. There's nothing out of order. He has been the right-hand man.
What is it, Honorable Serone? Is it that you want to compete in the position of spannership or something?
Mr. Speaker, I think the leader of majority is out of order in this issue, because Honorable Wario was a councillor MCA on a Wiper ticket in Tana River, not that being a spanner boy. He has been a supporter of Wiper.
From Sarone.
I know.
You know, when you are nominated like 001, you represent the people you have been nominated for, not the party, and not your party leader. So anytime you mention Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka,
would you therefore, Honorable Leader, care to confirm which persons he's supposed to be representing himself?
No.
Because at least 001 is clear.
You know, Mr. Speaker, when Honorable Oburu was here, we did not understand who he represented. So even now, we don't know who he represents, Honorable. Maybe the elderly. Maybe the elders of the country. Because the provision in the Constitution is very clear. Yeah, maybe he's representing, as the leader of minority, saying the loyalist. But Mr. Speaker, Honorable Wario, I want to thank him. And the matter he brought, Mr. Speaker, is a matter of great national importance. Mr. Speaker, the people who live in the downstream, Garissa County, Tana River County, and by extension, Lamu County, are victims of a deliberate scheme by an institution of government that every time there's rains and the dams overflow, they destroy all the hard-earned agricultural produce of those communities. But Mr. Speaker, this year was worse. Towns and villages and centers were submerged. In fact, I went to my constituency, 3/4 of my constituency, there is a town, the ones which are living near the river, properties and schools have been submerged. Mr. Speaker, I really want this committee, and you direct it, that they expand this petition to part of Garissa County and part of Lamu County. And the women rep is sitting at the back there. I'm sure Honorable Captain Obo will also contribute. so that, we get a solution to this problem. The same like Nyando. And you can't just say that you announce on the radio people to vacate their homes and property that they have built. That the Minister for Energy comes and says, I am going to give notice, can you leave? Now, how do you leave your home? How do you leave your property, the farms that you have invested for many years? And it is year in, year out. So we really want Parliament, to the committee, the relevant committee, to go to the ground, see the schools, how they have been damaged, see how mosques and churches have been damaged, see how agricultural produce have been damaged. And Mr. Speaker, we can compensate. Parliament has the powers of, this House has the powers of making the budget. So that we bring a decision, so that the Minister for Energy, the board and the CEO of KenGen can go to the ground and see. And I'm sure even the president, the deputy president, all of them are aware, government is aware, the ministers are aware. But we cannot just leave Kenyans just to lose their property every year. And I'm sure members sitting here, you must have been aware, you have seen the television, what was going on in Lamu, in Tana River. And
Members who will speak to this one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to support this petition. And I'm very confident that the committee, chaired by my very good friend and able colleague, Honorable Gikaria, will take it up. But, Mr. Speaker, the committee can only look at the wider issues of compensation and futuristic matters. But on this particular incident, it's a clear case of criminal negligence. And I have seen in the recent past certain actions have been taken against people for negligence. And people have been taken to court. So I think this is a case where somebody needs to go to court, to be taken to court, to be charged, so that it serves as a deterrence to the rest of these fellas who had these paracetals. Mr. Speaker, there's lethargy all over. And it cannot be acceptable that a paracetal of the stature of KenGen can just casually release waters from a dam that ends up killing people, Mr. Speaker. Lives have been lost of guards and constituents, and this needs to be taken very, very seriously. I believe that my colleague also, the chair of National Security Committee, will also take up this matter and address it separately. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Leader of minority, and by the way, you should have been a little earlier. I didn't see his name here. Being the yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, actually, I had given an indication, I think, even earlier than the leader of majority. But, Mr. Speaker, I also want to support this petition. Number one, as Honorable Wandai has just said, the reason why we form parastatals is to make lives of Kenyans better, not to risk the lives of Kenyans. And, Mr. Speaker, if we were as a civilized country as we claim, if a parastatal contributes to loss of life due to carelessness and recklessness and the negligence of what they are supposed to do, by now the MD of that company would have resigned. But now, because we are Kenya, you still find it that they want it to appear like it was natural calamity. What happened in Tana River, what happened in Garissa County, that was not natural calamity. It was the work of public servants who were given the responsibility of doing a job, and they failed to do their job. So, Mr. Speaker, this is not just unique to KenGen. I think public institutions in this country need to be careful. I want to tell the House, Mr. Speaker, as I said, that even where I come from, there is a national park, Ruma National Park. Because of the activities of those who are given the responsibility of protecting the park, they don't see the need to make sure that that park is rid of fly menace. So you find many of my constituents and the constituencies around lose livestock, even lose lives, because fly is dangerous to human life. Until when, Mr. Speaker, will we ask those who are in charge of our public institutions that their single most important responsibility is to protect the life and property of the people of Kenya? It's not to make profit.
They are not formed to make profit. In fact, we would even finance Kenyan further if they are incurring losses for protecting the lives of Kenyans. But you see, most of these public institutions are driven by profit instead of service to the society. Mr. Speaker, I hope the committee will take this matter seriously. Thank you.
Honorable Raso. I don't know why you don't have the mic. Yes, you have it now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this petition. I think this petition confirms the impunity and lack of responsibility that we are witnessing in government. It was very sad during the rains when almost 3 counties were underwater, and nobody was coming out clearly to say what help those citizens were receiving, either from the parastatal called Kenyan or from the national government, for that matter. Whatever help they were given, it is as if they needed maize and rice and sugar, and yet they had lost all their properties. Mr. Speaker, what is really important is the management of the upper waters of the Tana, and also a long-time plan on how the waters of the Tana must be managed, just as it happened in Budalangi for a long time. Nowadays, we don't hear much about Budalangi, although it is still lingering, but some solution was found. I think the issue of Tana must be settled now by this government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let's see, members, you'll get an opportunity to speak, don't you worry. I know this is a very, I'm trying to look out for those members whom I know are really affected by this, and I noticed that honorable member there.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You see, Honorable Sankoka, I'm sure you don't represent Narok. That I am very sure. And the honorable Majority Leader had indicated what you represent. It is definitely not Narok. So even when I give you the opportunity, it will not be because of Narok. Proceed, Honorable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The move of this petition is my neighbor. I come from Tana River County. As you are aware, Tana River County has 3 constituencies. There's Bura, Galole, and Garsen. All of them were affected badly by these floods. Apart from loss of property and livelihoods, we also lost lives. In my constituency, Mr. Speaker, I lost 6 people. Number 1 is Muhsin Ade Kofa. Number 2, Nasir Maro Kofa. Number 3, Hamza Adnan Kofa. The 3 come from one location called Mikinduni location.
Honorable Member, so that we can save time, don't go to those details, because when the committee will be dealing with this particular one, yes, you will be able to present some of those very real details to them. So I'm just giving, I want members to, have a small contribution to it. So please, as you wind up.
Okay, the interest of time, Mr. Speaker, we lost 6 people in my constituency, and this is a serious matter. I therefore support so that this matter can be investigated, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Very well. The other Honorable Wario. Now the Honorable Wario Toll, the senior one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I raise to support this petition. Mr. Speaker, this is purely a man-made disaster. We have lost lives and livelihoods. The aftermath of this disaster, Mr. Speaker, is leading us to another disaster of disease outbreak and disaster of poverty. We have people who have enough livestock, but because of disease outbreak, they will wake up paupers the following day, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition, and I want these people to be criminally held responsible for destroying lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Wamalwa Kiminini.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, let
Mr.
me tell
Speaker.
you, even as Honorable Wamalwa contributes to this, I can see the member for Lamu is a bit agitated, but her card is not here. I have been looking out to give her an opportunity. I cannot see how I can help her. Yeah? So unfortunately, proceed, the Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, under Article 95 of the Constitution, the National Assembly deliberates on and resolves issues of concern to the people, like this one of flooding, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Honorable Wario for bringing this matter up. And indeed, we do know very well, Mr. Speaker, we have some money for emergencies, actually at the county level and the national level. This is the money that is supposed to be used when it comes to mitigating such issues, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, coming back to KenGen, before KenGen is supposed to have acted proactively, Mr. Speaker, by looking at the weather patterns, by liaising with the weather forecast department, so that they be able to project whether the dam was going to hold that particular volumes of water. Mr. Speaker, I find it was professional negligence, and KenGen must be held responsible, Mr. Speaker. And as we speak now, the MD of KenGen should actually step aside, because looking at the lives of the people, Mr. Speaker, they have lost their lives, they have lost their property, and she's smiling in the office, Madam Speaker. This is not acceptable. Because before you make any decision, Mr. Speaker, before you make any decision of releasing the water downstream, they must have done an environmental impact analysis, which is supposed to be evaluated economically, technically, socially. This is something which is supposed to have been done. So as the CEO, Mr. Speaker, the buck stops at the CEO. So she must step aside, because people have lost life because of her negligence, Mr. Speaker. Parliament must pronounce itself on this.
That is, now
because,
let's stop
Mr.
there.
Speaker, it's a serious matter, and they must be compensated for that matter.
Honorable.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the committee, it is not just the Committee of Energy. I think, Mr. Speaker, this must be multi-sectoral, so that we can have committee even touching on environment, and even finance, so that they look at the compensation aspect, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Well, let's have a Honorable Member for Lamu, Honorable Abo, and you didn't place your card. That I can tell you, unless, you know.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, Lamu pia imeathirika pakubwa na haya matatizo. Sasa hii imeleta shida sana. Pia kuna watu majumba yao yamevunjwa na maji. Kuna mama alitoka Chalaluma kwenda kujifungua Wito hospitali kwa sababu ya kupanda kwa kidau cha Mau, kwa sababu pale Chalaluma sasa hii imezingirwa na maji, mpaka ukitaka kutoka katika mji wa Chalaluma mpaka upande kidau kidogo cha Mau. Mama huyo mjamzito alijifungua ndani ya Mau na mtoto akafariki. Bwana Spika, Lamu sasa hii kuna matatizo, wenyewe ni maskini. Kisha sasa hii imetokea magonjwa mengi. Mwanzo malaria imekuwa juu. Kitu ambacho umepata msaada ni chakula wamepata, lakini shida zimekuwa nyingi. Kuna wanyama wamepotea, mamba wanatembea. Hata sisi wenyewe tumejipeleka kuingia kwenda kuwafikia wale, tumebidi tuingie katika hiyo maji. Mamba wako tele, watu wanaogopa wanaweza watoto wao wakachukuliwa na mamba.
Hiyo imetosha hiyo sasa. Ingine utapatia kamati.
Haijatosha.
Imetosha hiyo. Ni amri, imetosha. Hiyo ingine utapeleka kwa kamati.
Lamu, Mr. Speaker, imekuwa affected sana, na wafaa waangalie hiyo mambo, wapate kama ni hatua ichukuliwe ya haraka.
Haya basi. We will have a member for Honorable Nimrod, member for Kitui. Is it Kitui? And then we are about to wind. Yes, proceed. Now again, I don't know why all members are, please, let needs not be an opportunity to, you are already, meanwhile, as we organize how you are going to be sorted, let's get the member for Turkana Central. Turkana Central, as we locate you.
Thank you,
can see the
Speaker.
difficulty we are having locating you. And you know the reason. You know the reason.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I stand to support that petition because the issue of the floods, Honorable Speaker, is all over the country. And many counties were affected, Honorable Speaker. But, Honorable Speaker, we need to see how we can respond to disaster. We need to see how we can manage disaster. And we need to see how we can compensate the victim of disaster. Honorable Speaker, this country has good policies on every department, but the problem, Honorable Speaker, is implementation. The Turkana County was affected seriously, and we lost lives of people and property, and the livestock, which is our livelihood. Honorable Speaker, we need to form a committee to investigate this issue. I support it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Honorable Bazuka.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support this petition. Reason, Mr. Speaker, the destructions brought forth by the flooding, especially in Tana River, brought in some serious destruction of personal property and public property. So in allocating resources for this, we need to look now to compensate households and families, and also to rebuild these, some of these affected public institutions like schools and hospitals. Mr. Speaker, Gariseni borders Tana River, borders Kitui East. Actually, the boundary between Garisen constituency and Kitui East is the Tana River. So in expanding or including more areas to be compensated, Mr. Speaker, Kitui East and especially Ndau location, Malalane location, Ivo location should not be left out, and especially also Kitui County as a whole.
Okay.
Lastly, Mr. Speaker, is the budget allocation. The House, through the leader majority and the Speaker, we need to allocate enough resources for this activity, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Okay, now, honorable members, you see I've really given more than sufficient. We've made it even a debate. Now, I will give them the chair, Energy Committee. And by the way, I think I'm not going to go the direction of Honorable Dr. Wamalwa. We will refer it to specifically the Committee on Energy. What Energy would do is, if they are interested in calling in some other, technical persons from other departments, that would be fine with them. So I will place it before the relevant committee, which is Energy. I know this is ideally a multi-sectoral issue, but it's better when they are the ones coordinating it themselves. So maybe just to have a word, because I do not think you want to contribute on this, is being placed before your committee. Honorable Gikaria.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And let me first of all agree with you, Honorable Speaker, and that much as is being placed. I want to agree with Honorable Amalwa that we, of course, as you have directed, will be calling some technical people from other ministries, particularly so that we can be able to, and I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, because I want to thank Honorable Rio for bringing this. But at the same time, Honorable Speaker, just to remind you, in the 11th Parliament, this issue was brought up again by the then Member of Parliament, and it went through the same committee, and later it was referred to Implementation Committee, where I was the Vice Chair. And we had an opportunity to visit both Tana River and other places. And I think now, as Honorable Duale has just indicated, it doesn't just affect their region. I think we need to look at the bigger picture and the affected areas, more so in Garissa, of course, Tana River, Lamu, and other places that this. But at the same time, Honorable Speaker, and I don't want to speak on this because, again, I think I'll be, because it will be coming before the committee can be. But at the same time, Honorable Speaker, it is important that this Parliament, when it speaks and gives direction, that those directions must be followed. And if this had been done in the 11th Parliament, then the issues that my brother Honorable Ario is bringing would not be there. The then committee had indicated and given directive, recommended, there is a very big dam that was called the High Grant Falls. That was actually the water that goes down comes from Meru. It actually comes from 3 counties in the Meru region, Tharaka Nithi, I think, and the neighboring counties, 3 of them. And if we had done the High Grant Falls, a very big dam that would have benefited this country in so many ways, like, of course, addressing that problem. Secondly, putting energy through hydro. At the same time, Honorable Speaker, the same water and that dam was supposed to assist Galana Kulalu in terms of irrigation.
Okay.
So I think those are some of the issues that we really needed. But at the same time, it is just we'll be looking at it, but we'll be also be calling up former reports from the others
All
so
right.
that we can be able.
Now,
Thank you, Mr.
I
Speaker.
will refer to your committee, knowing very well that this is a matter that goes definitely beyond the Committee on Energy. Because if we are only placing it before you, you see it will be only touching on issues of Lamu and maybe the Tana belt. But see, there is also something in Nyanza, parts of Nyakach. There is something in Trans Nzoia. There are many areas. So please, we expect your committee to go beyond the normal committee matters by involving other sectors. We have special programs. We have, Office of the President and so forth. So that is, it's really upon you to coordinate the entire exercise. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers. Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
I see no notice given by Honorable Minority Leader. There is nothing before me, unless it's for the afternoon. I really can't trace it from here, Honorable Minority Leader, so we can do it in the afternoon. It's even better for you, really. You'll be more prepared. I will not say the other. Proceed.
Order number 8, motion, expansion of the school feeding program to all public primary schools.
This one had been dispensed with honorable members. What remained was the question to be put. And since I confirmed that we have the requisite numbers, I will put the question, which is that aware that Article 53(1)(c) of the Constitution guarantees every child the right to basic nutrition, shelter, and health, cognizant of the fact that primary school-age children are at a stage where a child requires nutritional meal for a healthy mental and physical development and growth, aware that school feeding program had been implemented in Kenya since 1980s with varying degrees of success and with heavy reliance on foreign aid and management, noting that Kenya government introduced a homegrown school feeding program, HGSVP, in 2009, a more sustainable and nationally integrated program by the national government, funded by the school meals program through a multi-sectoral cooperation, appreciating that the school feeding program has played an integral part in realizing the country's goal of universal primary education through incentivizing the enrollment and retention of children, further noting that the feeding program targets food inequality in most vulnerable areas of Kenya, including school districts in arid and semi-arid areas, ASAL, and informal urban slums of large cities such as Nairobi and Mombasa. This House urges the government to expand the primary school feeding program to all public primary schools in the country. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of our contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, establishment of sports academies in every constituency.
On this particular one, we had a balance of 48 minutes. And of course, to remind members that speaking for 5 minutes, each contributing for 5 minutes. And let me start with the member for Runyenjes. Member for Runyenjes. Member for Runyenjes, I can't be able to see. I think there is a problem with your card. Maybe you can come to the dispatch. It would have been much better there, because when you come to the dispatch, there will be a lot of reflection from your head. but proceed anyway. You know, you are the first member from the Akorino sect to be in this parliament. And therefore, it is something worth, is in the Guinness books of this republic.
Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to add my voice to this motion. And I want to begin by thanking the Honorable Osotsi for coming up with this motion, because it is a very timely idea. It is coming at a time when the world is watching the greatest show in the world, and that is the World Cup. And it is a fact that sports has very many social and economic benefits. Mr. Speaker, Kenya takes pride in being one of the best countries in the world, in that we have very many athletes coming from this country who go out there and compete and bring back to this country many medals and so much glory that comes with it. We have even our rugby players who have made this country proud in the very many competitions that we have had in the world. So it is a fact that, Mr. Speaker, that this country is rich in very many young people who are talented in sports. As witnessed also last week in the national trials for Athletics Kenya, so many villages, Mr. Speaker, have so many young people who are quite talented. We witnessed young men and women coming from the villages, people who do not have trainers, people who do not have coaches, people who do not have resources and even places to go and train. They came to Kasarani just last week. They competed quite well, and quite a number of them had an opportunity to represent Kenya in Nigeria, I think next week. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this motion so that we can have sports academies in each and every constituency, so that we nurture the talents that our people have. Mr. Speaker, I have had a chance of organizing quite a number of events, sporting events in my constituency, and my experience is that we have so many of our people who can earn a living and who can go out there and improve their lives only if we invested more in sports. So with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support. Thank you.
Next is, if I were to remain here, let me remain there because I can see there are several on top. Let's have Honorable Abdallah Sheikh. Honorable Abdallah Sheikh. Honorable Abdallah Sheikh, member for Mandera North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the idea of having a sports academy to be cascaded down to all constituencies is a noble idea. As this affects the issue of youths, I have on a number of occasions spoken about engaging youths both in employment, whether formal or informal. And however, the sports activities is something that resonates well with the youths in all the constituencies. I remember some times back, the Ministry of Sports, Culture and Social Services were also supposed to build stadiums in each of the 47 counties. And I'm sure that target has not yet been achieved. So it will still be a tall order for them to actually actualize sports complexes in each of the constituencies in the country. Yet, we still have stadiums not completed in each of the 7 counties. However, each of the constituencies will reap big in terms of having this kind of complexes because it will engage the youths, it will tap their talents, and more so, also give them some form of employment, because these complexes will also equally employ people. So as we support this kind of measures, we want to ensure that the implementation part of it is followed to the letter. Because every now and then, as has been said by my colleagues before, things are passed in the House, nothing is implemented. It starts from 10th Parliament, 11th Parliament, and now this one. So it's a matter of us passing things and nobody follows through. However, this is a very good initiative. It will absorb many youths of all the genders. It will help in terms of unemployment for the youths. However, it is the implementation aspect of having these complexes cascading down to the constituencies that really matters. So I want to urge this House that as we pass this kind of good initiatives and follow through with the ministries, I want to urge the relevant committees to ensure that there's budget for this and the implementation is done to the letter. So I want to support this good initiative because it affects all the youths, as well as the youths from all the constituencies, including where I come from, Mandera North. So I support, thank you.
Now, let me go to this other side, and I'm having it difficult to pick because they are a little lower down the line. But let's have a member for Ndiwa.
I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity. And Honorable Soti, kudos to this. I think this is overdue. Mr. Speaker, as you know, inactivity is a recipe for chaos in health and social order. And recently, Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, we are witnessing an unprecedented wave of suicide because young people do not have where they can do sports and also engage themselves. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, we are also going to enhance talents. As you watch those people running after the ball, they are millionaires, and some are billionaires. The Macy's type and all those Neymar, they came from some kind of these settings. So I think in Ndiwa, where there's a home of Gor Mahia, we have so many talented people that can end up in a national standing and even international. So by doing this, Mr. Speaker, we'll be exporting not only to our...
Did you say it is home of Gor Mahia?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, that is...
I know for sure Gor Mahia is based at the Nyayo Stadium. How does it become home of Gor Mahia?
No, this is the original home. Mr. Speaker, we are trying to come up with a facility to reflect this legend because that is where Gor Mahia Kogalo was born, raised, and died. And that is where the name picked up. Yes, that is his home. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this will be a good thing for us in the constituency of Ndewa to have this academy as well. Economically, I think this is the origin of developing our people, and also, if we can borrow from those who are playing in the international standards, they have plowed back what they earn in that arena to build schools, build academies, build health institutions, and many other things. So economically, this will be something which is very healthy. But more so, Mr. Speaker, young people worldwide, studies have shown that they get their discipline when they are active, when they are playing. These academies will also promote self-esteem, which is very good for health. When you run, you tone the muscles, you also reduce stress, and be sure diabetes and hypertension will also go. And this will provide a facility for everyone, not only young people, to come and do that. Self-esteem. When these are all research-oriented, when you are engaged in sports, especially the young people, they get self-esteem, and that can also go far as much as improving their academic credentials, school performance, even school attendance. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say, because Ndewa is a land of sports, but we don't have these facilities, we are so many energetic individuals that extend even running during the night. So with academy there, I think we will have everybody participating during the day. And that will be a good thing for us in Dhiwa. But more so, that's on a light note, I want to support this with enlightenment that it will promote having at least a facility in every constituency, which is constitutional right, people to access where they can exercise and where they can also promote their talents. So with those, Mr. Speaker, I support, and may this not go only to the archives, but may it be implemented by the respective committees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now, Honorable Kubai, Igembe Central. I think Honorable Kubai is also fairly elderly, so Jimmy, you shouldn't complain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think despite that we respect age, let us go by the interventions or what we have, or those people when they keyed in their accounts. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this motion by Honorable Osoti, and I congratulate him for having brought this. But Mr. Speaker, before I come to that one, I would like to comment on the petition from the member from Ali Wario, and I would like us to appreciate that these waters which go down to flood the Tana River districts or the counties, they originate from the islands, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, let us appreciate that all the waters which go there, when they come from the islands, they erode the islands and leave very big gullies, and also take away the topsoil, and those areas are left barren, Mr. Speaker. So I urge the committee which will look into that one, at least to also look at the gullies and the erosions which are caused in the islands. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that we need to have sports academies in our constituencies. Mr. Speaker, as we have schools, we need these academies because it is said that practice makes perfect, and also we learn through institutions. And Mr. Speaker, those people we can see excelling in the world of football or in the world of games, they originate from villages like any other village in Kenya, but because of the exposure, because of the facilities, because of the support the government gives, that is why we get people excelling in their various talents. And so, more so, those who don't get that, those facilities or that exposure, at the end of the day, the talents are killed from the grassroots or from origin, and therefore we can start claiming that when shall Kenya at least have a team in the World Cup? We can never have a team in the World Cup if we don't even develop the talents we have by giving the corrective facilities. And the facilities which are there, we cannot say that Nyayo Stadium and Moi International Stadium are the only stadiums which we can use to develop talents. We need sports facilities in Masabit. We need one in Moyale. We need one in Isemania. We need one in Meru. We need one in Maua and many other places, so that those talents which are down there in the villages are exploited, and before they come to Nairobi and go outside in the world, they will have already been developed within their local communities. Mr. Speaker, on the same token, I would say that these academies will also help to nurture our youths into proper citizens, proper people who we have been cultured to be responsible in this country, Mr. Speaker. Presently, our youths, when they leave school, or even in the evening or during the holidays, they are engaged in so many illicit activities which are not beneficial to their lives and to the society. That's why we get drug peddling, that's why we got drug abuse, and many other problems which are associated with the same. But if we preoccupy these youths in academies or in these sports activities during and after school, Mr. Speaker, these vices in the society will be curtailed. Therefore, I urge that we need to support sports. I am a member of the Sports and the Tourism Committee, Mr. Speaker, and we are trying to support the creation of standards in this country, sports academies, and any other venture which will keep our youth on their toes as far as proper living is concerned. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Let's have the member for Suna West, Honorable Masara Francis.
Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity, I rise to support this motion because sports play a major role in nurturing the talents for the youth. Mr. Speaker, if we can allocate funds for academies in every constituency come next financial year, I believe we are going to reduce the rate of unemployment among the youths. Because there are so many young men outside there who can actually earn a living through sports. But because they don't have an academy to nurture their talents, some of them get idle and start doing things which are not right. I want to suggest that this house proposed Suna West to be the first place where this academy should be done, because we have even 5 acres of plot at Pinyoye where we want talent to be nurtured. Mr. Speaker, I want to give you a brief that Suna West borders Tanzania and Koreans. And we have a lot of cattle rustling there. If we do a sports academy, those who are stealing cows during the night will do it during the day by doing sports, football, and even athletes and boxing. So we will reduce this menace of cattle rustling. Mr. Speaker, in developed countries, where these academies are developed, like Indonesia was there sometimes back, you need not to take somebody through all the system of normal education up to Form 4 to the university level, yet is somebody who can play good football and earn a living. So with these sports academies in every constituency, 1, we will create employment, 2, we will nurture talents, and 3, we will even enhance cohesion. When people do sports, they interact, and in the process, they get used to one another and they make friends. So I really urge this House that we support this motion, not only in the flow of the House, but as well in terms of monetary allocation. Mr. Speaker, I've had many members talking about this thing was started way back in 10th Parliament. But as the 12th Parliament, I want us to go a step higher by next year reducing funds from National Youth Service and allocating it to the Sports Academy, so that the youths who are traveling all the way to the NYS camps can do it at their constituency levels. Mr. Speaker, thank you so much, and I'll continue supporting this, and I congratulate Honorable Geoffrey for bringing this motion in the House. Thank you.
Okay, let's have Honorable Mulele, and the chair of the committee will be speaking last, and we probably have about 2 more members before it reaches you, because you will be the one who will give a summary.
Speaker, this is a good motion by the Honorable Sot. Speaker, for a long time we have paid lip service to the youth of this country. And it is time that we as a House must take these matters into our own hands. By doing this, Speaker, there is a proposal which is going to come to this House that we create a national sports lottery. And this was said by the President himself in one of his, in the 11th House, when he proposed that the national government is going to come up with a national lottery, which will be used to finance some of these things, these academies in the constituencies, and he said in the counties. But the Honorable Sotsi has proposed that it should go all the way to the constituencies. And I think this is a good idea, and this is an idea which we must run with. And this House must rise up and give funding to this idea. The only way to do that, Honorable Speaker, is through the budget. So that when the budget comes, when we come to discuss the budget, one of the proposals that the minister made was that we should find the taxes that come from these betting companies should be cascaded into the Ministry of Sports and used to fund these kind of ideas. So we as a parliament and the Committee for Sports now must come up with the structures which this funding is going to be used. And this is a time when the committee must be ready to go around the country and identify these ideas where these funds can be implemented. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, we as the people of Rwanda, we are ahead. We have started by renovating some of our fields and upgrading them, so that the kids and the young people in the constituency have a place where they can go to play. And Speaker, we are not saying this just because for lip service. We know for a fact that some of the people who are playing in the World Cup today, their only commitment in life is actually to sport, to football. The people like Messi, people like Ronaldo, they do not have any other profession. In Kenya here, we expect our children to go to school, to become professional, become lawyers, become doctors, and also play games. We need to nurture talent. And if you're talented in a field, sports for example, football for example, let it be the field that earns your daily bread. So therefore, I support this idea, and I urge our committee on sports to take up this idea and run with it. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Honorable Danita Gatti.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to thank you so much for this opportunity. And Mr. Speaker, I think this cannot end without my voice. Mr. Speaker, young people in this country, Mr. Speaker, remain unemployed, remain underpaid in whatever jobs, Mr. Speaker, that they do. And Mr. Speaker, for me, I want to say that I do support the sports academies and the stadium. Mr. Speaker, I remember the Jubilee government in its manifesto, Mr. Speaker, talked about the stadia in every, counties, Mr. Speaker, and most of these stadia are yet to be actualized. So, Mr. Speaker, the fact that now we want to bring down into constituencies, Mr. Speaker, is very easy. And, Mr. Speaker, I would support members of parliament, Mr. Speaker, in various constituencies, and especially, Mr. Speaker, and I want to bring here an amendment, and Mr. Speaker, talk about the issue of carrying on board and bringing to this stadium, Mr. Speaker, youths with disability. Mr. Speaker, even as we are talking here, what we should be supporting also, Mr. Speaker, is that members of parliament, as we talk about, the stadia and the sports academies, Mr. Speaker, we have youths that have disability and have talent in sports in various constituencies here, Mr. Speaker, in almost every constituency. So, Mr. Speaker, what I want to say, Mr. Speaker, in this addition is to urge that as we look forward to establishing this stadia and these sports academies in our constituency, Mr. Speaker, we need to know that our young people also have talent and our youths who live with disability, Mr. Speaker, so that, Mr. Speaker, as we are planning in the various constituencies, Mr. Speaker, we are allocating and making it accessible for youths that have disability and want to participate in sports. Mr. Speaker, and that is why for me, I would support this motion, and I want to ensure that with our constituency, Honorable Peter Masara, Mr. Speaker, spoke very passionately about young people and about Suna West constituency. Mr. Speaker, I come from his county. I come from Migori County, and I come from Kuria East. Mr. Speaker, the challenges, for example, that we face between Suna West and Suna East, Mr. Speaker, these are challenges where young people are engaged in other activities. For example, cattle rustling, as the Honorable Member for Suna West talked about, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, starting with constituencies that are basically situated even outside, those border constituencies and border counties, Mr. Speaker, would also come in handy to ensure that, Mr. Speaker, these evils, Mr. Speaker, and the ills that really affect young people, Mr. Speaker, are well taken care of. The SDGs, Mr. Speaker, the Sustainable Development Goals, basically, Mr. Speaker, carry along everybody, including people with disability. So, Mr. Speaker, I would be very keen to see and to monitor the constituencies and how they put aside areas and they designate areas where young people with disability who want to participate in sports, Mr. Speaker, are also able to engage. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, this is a very key motion here. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I want to support the establishment of these sports academies in the various constituencies, so that, Mr. Speaker, they're able to start from the basic, the ground, so that it is easier for young people who live in those constituencies to participate in sports, Mr. Speaker. We have known very well, Mr. Speaker, that sports goes a long way in ensuring that our young people, are healthy. Mr. Speaker, it goes a long way to ensure that the socio-economic empowerment of our people is all-rounded, Mr. Speaker. We have seen many of our people all the time, Mr. Speaker, who want to participate in sports. And if you look at right now what is happening, Mr. Speaker, the World Cup is going on, Mr. Speaker, and our young people, because we do not have academies to nurture that talent, all our young people, Mr. Speaker, are betting and supporting international clubs without supporting our own. Mr. Speaker, it is a problem there, and we need to really put a lot of focus and a lot of our talent into nurturing young people and young talents, and including youths, Mr. Speaker, that have with disability. They have to participate in sports, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, allow me to support this motion.
Very well. The Honorable Victor Munyaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. From the onset, I want to thank Honorable Sot for coming up with this motion. And on behalf of the committee I chair, Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism, I really want to assure Honorable Tosi that the committee will be committed in making a bill out of this motion so that we entrench sports academies into law. So congratulations for coming up with that motion. Mr. Speaker, you are actually a member of the sports committee, and you understand that sports has suffered historical underfunding for so many years. And now that there is a committee specifically in charge of sports, I think we are going to request this membership of this House to be able to support our committee so that eventually we get enough budgetary support so that we can create those facilities across the country so that we can be able to engage our youth. Our youth actually form 70% of our population. And if we could be able to fund and engage all the youths across the country, we'll not need to put a lot of funding to prisons and even to security activities, because the youth will already be occupied and there will be less crime in the country. Mr. Speaker, currently, the country was actually developing 5 Chan stadia, Kasarani and Nyayo being one of them, and the 7 other regional stadia. But unfortunately, due to budget cuts last year, most of these stadia are still ongoing and are not even complete. So we are not even in a position to hold serious international activities, sporting activities. So generally, we will want to urge the government to put more emphasis in supporting infrastructure of sporting activities. And as we are also aware that Kenya is very famous on rugby and athletics. We also want to promote other sporting activities. I know, Chair, Speaker, you are fun and you are passionate of swimming. We need to
Speaker, I would also like to congratulate and thank Honorable Sotsi for bringing this very important motion. I want to recognize also that the chair of the sports committee where I am, Dr. Victor Munyala, has also indicated we would like to get a bill out of it. Mr. Speaker, I just want to emphasize one key issue that, in my view, is really important as we think about this motion. When we talk a lot about young people, we sometimes do not recognize that if we do not harness their energy in a systematic way and bring sports for the purpose of not only ensuring that we are giving them a way to engage and a way to compete favorably, then we leave them to a lot of vices, such as drug abuse and engaging in other areas where we see very high levels of unwanted pregnancies. And we end up in context where, in a number of cases, as we can see, Mr. Speaker, right now, we are in a country where we start talking of whether or not parents should not start talking of getting their young children to be introduced to contraceptives. And so one specific point, in my view, for ensuring that we can provide sports academies is so that we can cater for our young people, we can nurture and introduce them to very healthy competition, and we can ensure that we do not keep them glued to social media and get addictions that are not in a way productive. And as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I also want to urge that we acknowledge that we need to be a little more vigilant in terms of allocating resources and really pulling on what we already have. At the moment, Mr. Speaker, we already have community clubs, and it would be useful that as we begin to talk about this, we conclude. And finally, in the interest of sports, I can see, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Sankok is indeed giving me a very good way to compete favorably in sports. Honorable Sankok is 001, Mr. Speaker, that I know earlier we assume that we only have one nominee 001 because somehow the nominee 001, Sankok, has been able to be very, very vocal on this. But in the interest of the handshake, Mr. Speaker, as we look across, we will see that we have 001, Honorable Sankok, and 001, Honorable Professor Dual. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion. Thank you.
Very well. The Honorable Sankok, I didn't know that we are 001, but it's not you I'm giving this opportunity. This opportunity goes to the Honorable Hululo Oda, member for Isiolo North. Honorable members, I see the Honorable Kabinga is saying to make us son.
Okay.
But all of us have been here. And the mic is only one.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Hululo, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Wanga, what is out of order? Just hold on, Honorable Hululo. Information. Who is to be informed? The chair of...
Chair,
Just
Mr.
hold on,
Speaker,
Honorable Hululo.
I wanted to inform the Chair of Sports and Honorable Professor Dual, who's also a member of the Sports Committee, that what we are dealing with here in form of a motion is already in the bill, in the Sports Act. So what the Sports Committee should do is budget, just like you said, budget, put money in sports academies for the next. So we are urging the government. This urging is not useful. We just need to put money, the issues being raised are in the Act, put money for sports academies, so that by the time we are coming to the next budget here, we have money for sports academies. Otherwise, Section 34A and Section 33(4) have already, of the Sports Act, already have the issue of academies. So I just wanted to inform the House and the Chair.
Very well. The Honorable Wanga, what you're saying, it might be well, and very true, but the House does not at least set out matters down in vain. And I think what you're doing here, canvassing this motion, is quite in order so that it adds voice to what you are now saying, reinforces the requirement for budget for that. The Honorable Hululo, proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. I would like to begin by thanking my good friend, Honorable Tsotsi, for coming up with this motion, and by extension, the party which sponsored him to sit in this August House as a nominated member. I think he deserves, he has proven why he merited to be given that slot. Mr. Speaker, a lack of sport academies in the country has resulted into our inability as a country to tap into talents among our children and youth. Mr. Speaker, as a country, I think apart from school games and sports, we do not actually have any form of organized way of providing opportunities for our young people, even those who are in school, to participate in sports events. Creation of these, the proposed academies
the way I see it, will enable us as a country to identify talents, to nurture those talents, and to enable our children and our youth to benefit from those talents. It is very evident that those sportsmen and women, for example, who have excelled, the few who have excelled through their sheer hard work, irrespective, despite lack of organized system of nurturing their talents, are leading very good life, and they are also making substantial contribution to economy of this country. We have so many towns in North Rift, for example, where as a result of athletes who come from there, they have put up a lot of investments, they have provided employment opportunities by extension for others, and so on and so forth. In the area, in the region which I come from, Mr. Speaker, because of lack of these academies, we have a lot of raw talents which go into waste. When, of course, the rate of unemployment among our youth is very high, when we have opportunities actually to identify those with talents and develop them, it is one way of ensuring that probably we shall help them to escape poverty. As we speak, even technical staff of Ministry of Sports are idle. They are employed, they earn salaries, we have them in almost all the sub-counties, but because of lack of facilities to enable them support our children and our youth, they are drawing salaries without, carrying out their mandate. And therefore, as I conclude, I would like to urge the Sports Committee, as suggested by the Chair, to help us come up with a framework that will help us to provide sustainable funding for the proposed academies in the constituencies. Thank you very much, and I support.
The Honorable Sangok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And for sure, there's honors in this world nowadays are those that are in sport. If you think of the salary of Cristiano Ronaldo, which ran into several millions in a week, surely we need to nurture the talent of our youth. And when we nurture the talent of our youth, we draw their attention away from drugs, away from alcoholism, and away from immorality. Honorable Speaker, I really don't have to repeat all those benefits that come with nurturing the talent of our youth, especially from our rural areas. It is shameful that in this world, those that win gold medal in javelin are not Maasais, they are not Samburus, they are not Turkanas, because these people, from their childhood, tender ages, they play and they use this javelin as sport. If we can nurture them, that talent, then we will have increase in gold medal. Honorable Speaker, I just want to bring the attention of this House to when we went for Paralympic last year in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. There was a team of Olympics, of persons without disabilities, and there was the team of Paralympic. The team of those without disability were 89 athletes, and they won 13 medals in total. That is partly 14%. For those who were persons with disabilities, we had 9 athletes, and they won 6 medals for this country. That is almost 70%. And there is no medal that have disability. Now you can imagine if we had 89 athletes of persons with disabilities. This country will have been having more than 60 medals. But because of prejudice that is tied to persons with disabilities, then you find that in sport, it is very difficult to include persons with disability. And I'm also ashamed that we have discussed this motion for now the second day, and it's only Honorable Gatti, who is also a person with disability, who have mentioned sports of persons with disabilities. We are talking of 10% of the total population of this country, and we are ignoring it. We are ignoring them even from the House that make laws, because none of honorable members who have contributed to this motion have mentioned persons with disability, apart from a person with disability themselves. That's why sometimes we even feel that even inside this House, our issues are not taken really very seriously. Because for sure, you know you have a neighbor, you have a friend, you have a relative with disability. They are also human beings with feelings. And who also, they are children, they are youth, who also need to play, who need to nurture their talent. Honorable Speaker, so when we are developing these academics, these sport academies, please let us consider nurturing the talent of youth with disabilities. Let us consider accessibility to these academies, because sometimes when these academies are not accessible to persons with disability, they will then prejudice against them. They may not be able to participate in this sport. Honorable Speaker, there is no gold, there is no medal that have disability. When a gold medal is earned for this country, like when I was in Rio de Janeiro, where we earned 6 medals, 3 of them were gold medal, and the flag of Kenyan was raised high, not half post, because it is worn by a person with disability. The national anthem was sung, not halfway, but it was sung in full, because the goal is a goal and no goal is with disability. So I urge this House, whenever we consider the rest of the population, let us also consider persons with disability. And thank you, Honorable Gatti, thank you, Professor Oduor, for considering the issues of persons with disability. I urge all of us also to consider whenever we are discussing of important issues, including even when we are discussing about floods. You know, floods actually, it is persons with disability who are affected most. Some of them lost cows. Us, we lost wheelchairs, we lost crutches. So it was, the loss for us was even more. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I support this motion.
The mover to reply, the Honorable Sotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to reply. But before I reply, Mr. Speaker, I would like to make a few comments. Mr. Speaker, I'll start by thanking the members for their overwhelming interest in this motion. This demonstrates that we are very much concerned about the youth problem in this country. Mr. Speaker, I must also report that there has been overwhelming interest from the members of public. I have received unsolicited memorandum from a number of organizations, especially on the issue of community sports management. People who are interested to have as set in place mechanisms to have sports, community sports management at the local level. Mr. Speaker, when we talk about sports academy, what many people think is construction of buildings and all those kind of things. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to also think about the software aspect of the sports academy. We are talking about having coaches, and I think that is what is more important when it comes to sports academy management. If you look at countries that have succeeded in this area, they did not put too much focus into the hardware element, but the software element is also very key. Mr. Speaker, I do not want to go into the details about what are the benefits of this sports academy, because that has been dealt with extensively by members in their contribution. But if we had stronger leagues in all types of games, then the multiplier effect would even be higher. Mr. Speaker, sports also will trigger effect in other sectors of the economy, especially tourism, travel, tourism, like now at the World Cup. What is happening in Russia? A lot of tourists have traveled to Russia, not just to watch teams playing in the World Cup, but also to visit the country and see what the country has. So we are talking about to work together. We know that this House has put a lot of money in TVET. I know in other countries like Canada, TVETs also have a sports academy section. So as we put more money into TVET, we also need to think how we can harmonize this with this sports academy. Mr. Speaker, for those very few remarks, I beg to reply. Thank you very much.
Very well. The Honorable Michael Mushira. I think we have a problem with the mic system. Probably you may want to use the dispatch. Yeah, come to the front here.
Transformative youth empowerment in Kenya, further aware that the twin purpose of NYS are to create a pool of technical, disciplined, and organized human resource to undertake national development programs and to alleviate youth unemployment in both formal and informal sectors by providing skills for employment while promoting national cohesion, further appreciating that NYS currently targets to recruit over 26,000 youths annually through a laid-down procedure where the vacancies in each intake are allocated for every county, and gender, acknowledging that the recruits undergo intense 6-month training in paramilitary skills, national construction programs, and disaster response. First of all, to support my motion, I would like to state that the idea of NYS, when NYS was introduced in Kenya, it was a good idea and still remains a good idea, because the main purpose was to target the youths who normally don't qualify to go to the university, and the youths who are normally poor, the youths who are not able to proceed to university level and college level, so that they are trained, they are given training at the NYS. And therefore, the idea or initiative of NYS still remains relevant, up to date. I know at the moment, because of the not of their own making. So I want to start with that basis, that the idea, the initiative of NYS still remains a good idea. In fact, we should strengthen the NYS so that it can continue empowering our youths who are normally not able to progress to the university and college level. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that the training that normally happens in YAS, it's quite rigorous, quite intensive. The youths are given in disciplined forces. And Mr. Speaker, after training these youths in paramilitary skills, we release them to the public. They become jobless. They become frustrated. And out of this, they become a soft target for terrorists and criminal gangs because of the fact that they have been trained in paramilitary skills. They become soft target for the terrorists. They become soft target for the criminal gangs. They are easily recruited. And if this is not checked, Mr. Speaker, it could be a time bomb, because we are recruiting every year 26,000 youths in NYS. Every year, we graduate 26,000 youths. These youths who are trained in paramilitary skills, they are out there jobless. Some who are lucky to be retained by the NYS, they are paid a patronage, I think 2,100. Initially, it was 700 per month. It is now 2,100, Mr. Speaker, per month, 2,100, which is not enough. So after training our youths, they are left desperate, looking for jobs. Some try their luck in security guards. Some are still loitering around. So, Mr. Speaker, if we don't check these experiments, we could be having a time bomb in terms of security threats, where these youths will be recruited in criminal gangs, terrorists, and such. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, what we need to do, what this House, Honorable House, needs to do, is to urge all the discipline forces that we prioritize recruitment. Recruitment happens every year in all our discipline forces. We need to prioritize these youths. We absorb them in our discipline forces so that their training, their energy is utilized in the discipline forces. Going to training to recruitment cost. Mr. NYS recruitment, it's normally competitive. It is done competitively. It is done in all sub-counties. It considers gender. It considers all ethnic communities. The youths undergo medical checkups so that at the end of the day, after the recruitment, the graduate represents the face of the country. So it is not biased. Therefore, if you are to recruit from NYS, it would mean the training period will shorten and the training cost will also go down. So that will be another advantage, Mr. Speaker, of recruiting from NYS. And I'm not saying entirely, we entirely recruit from NYS. What I'm saying is that we give priority to NYS, and if the discipline forces still need more, now they can go to the public. Mr. Speaker, I understand and I know there's a president issued a directive to that effect that the discipline forces should consider absorbing NYS recruits first before going to the public for recruitment. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, from the statistics, this directive is barely followed, because as late as the last recruitment that was done by discipline forces, only less than 10% from NYS were absorbed to the discipline forces. Less than 10%, Mr. Speaker, means out of the 26,000 graduates who graduate from NYS, less than 2,000 are absorbed to the discipline forces, meaning 24,000 are still left. Mr. Speaker, I don't know why the discipline forces are finding it difficult to follow that, the presidential directive, but absolutely, that's why I've come up with this motion, so that the House now, once this motion is passed through the implementation committee, can push so that these undergraduates, these graduates from NYS, Mr. Speaker, can be absorbed, and so that we can reduce the training cost, we can reduce the recruitment cost, and so that we can alleviate the security threat that is likely to face us when we have so many youths who are out there trained in military, in paramilitary skills and such. And also, Mr. Speaker, create employment, and also create the urge to join the NYS. Mr. Speaker, you remember a while ago, before joining university, everybody who was to join university was required to undergo some training in NYS. And everybody who has undergone that training can confess that it was important. It instilled discipline to the people. It instilled some form of endurance to the people who underwent that training. So that training is quite important. And Mr. Speaker, we should even consider making it almost compulsory, that before you join discipline forces, you undergo training in NYS and such. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and ask my colleague, Honorable Kwenya Dhuku from Kinagop, to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Thuku.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity to second the motion by Honorable Muchera prioritizing recruitment of NYS graduates into the disciplined forces. Indeed, this is a timely motion because indeed we are putting so much money into National Youth Service in terms of recruitment and training and in instilling skills in our young men and women. But I'm disappointed that after instilling all those skills and having taken our young men and women to such kind of paramilitary training, most of them end up jobless. Most of them end up not being absorbed anywhere in our disciplined forces. And therefore they become a threat to the national security because naturally when a young man who is energetic, trained with skills, gets an opportunity to utilize the skills elsewhere, then it is obvious that maybe they can be misused by gangs, Al-Shabaab, I mean terrorist groups and stuff like that. And therefore, the urge to have our young men absorbed in the disciplined forces cannot be gainsaid, I mean. And therefore, my urge and my contribution to this motion, as I support, is that we should have a program whereby we're going to do training and retaining. Because it's so unfortunate whereby you put so much resources into some venture, and then after some time you abandon and put another some other investment in another venture. After another moment, then you abandon again. Then we'll be going through circles that are not really beneficial to the taxpayers that are not beneficial to this country. And my urge is that we train and retain. And the only retention that can be done is by carrying forward the young men and women who train, who get the paramilitary skills. We ensure that anytime there's a recruitment for disciplined forces in KDF, Kenya Wildlife Service, in prison services, Kenya Police, GSU, that the first people to be considered are the people who've successfully completed training in NYS. And it will even make the work of the government easier because they will not go back to the basics because the basic training is the same. So then it will even shorten the period in which the recruits will be required to be in the camps training. The other issue is in National Youth Service, our young men and women get skills, not just in paramilitary training. There are those who go through engineering courses, there are those who go through catering courses, others dressmaking courses. We are supposed to have a policy whereby as much as we let out a few to go out and be absorbed elsewhere in different disciplines, then we have a retention mechanism. Because, for example, NYS has invested heavily. All over the country, we have camps and we have equipment and everything. But when it comes to contracting, like when we want to do our roads, having so many young men who've been trained to do with engineering and civil engineering works and mechanical engineering works and stuff like that, we still outsource from China because we are not building capacity of what we already have. My contribution to this motion, as I support, is that we should have a program and maybe develop a law in this house whereby we're going to have an institution that is really going to take care of the skills that we get from NYS so that then they don't go down the drain. With those few remarks, I wish to second and support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, I propose the question that aware that the National Youth Service is a government department established by an Act of Parliament, Cap 208, Laws of Kenya, whose vision is to catalyze transformative youth empowerment in Kenya, further aware that the twin purpose of NYS are to create a pool of technical, disciplined, and organized human resource to undertake national development programs and to alleviate youth unemployment in both formal and informal sectors by providing skills necessary for employment while promoting national cohesion. Further appreciating that NYS currently targets to recruit over 26,000 youths annually through a laid-down procedure where the vacancies in each intake are allocated for every county and gender, acknowledging that the recruits undergo intense 6 months training in paramilitary skills, national reconstruction programs, and disaster response, thus imparting a sense of responsibility, values of discipline, respect to authority, among other skills and values. Deeply concerned that after successful completion of the training, the graduate youths are discharged to seek jobs which are often not readily available, cognizant of the various recruitment procedures, criteria, and budgets allocated for the recruitment and training of servicemen and women to serve in the various disciplined forces in Kenya. This House urges the government through all the disciplined forces to consider giving first priority in recruitment of their servicemen and women to willing NYS graduates with a view to reducing their recruitment costs, training period, and subsequently training costs, and in addition, creating jobs for these skilled youths. First person on the list here is the Honorable Mutua Barasa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. And from the very onset, I want to say I support this motion. And even as we support, there are a few things that we need to understand. The military does its recruitment countrywide to ensure that whatever they are doing is transparent. And even as we say that they should give the first priority to the NYS graduates, it must be done in a manner that the NYS graduates either to be recruited from their district of birth or district where they live, to ensure that the whole process is transparent, Mr. Speaker. And also to ensure that maybe they need to harmonize part of the syllabus for physical training so that they ensure that whatever that NYS goes through their training meets some level of standards that is required by the Kenya Defense Forces. Madam Speaker, we also now need to, even as we support this motion, the NYS must also carry out its recruitment in a transparent manner to avoid a scenario where we are only getting individuals from one particular region who are going to benefit from this military placement, Mr. Speaker. So it's a matter that is very interesting. It's a bill which all of us, we need to support and also try to beef up so that it becomes more objectives and aimed at benefiting many Kenyans. Since you are aware, the military, the Kenya Defense Forces is a force for this country, and their recruitment must be felt in every corner of this constituency, Mr. Speaker. And I want also to agree that this NYS recruits, at times they even cause security, hazard scare, because it doesn't make sense when you train a person through paramilitary, and then at the end of the day, you don't give this person an opportunity, a job, then that person can even graduate into a criminal. But as we say that the military should give first priority to the NYS, we are also not trying to make them discriminate, because the military has their own qualifications which they look into when they are hiring, when they are recruiting, the height, and all those other conditions. But NYS, looking at the bigger picture, they should not discriminate, because we will have other Kenyans who are going to the NYS specifically to acquire skills that are necessary for them to be employed in civilian institutions elsewhere in this country, Mr. Speaker. So this law should not look into giving the NYS the liberty to tighten their recruitment qualifications and to lock out other Kenyans, especially women and even people living with disabilities who go to seek training to get skills so that they can use these skills to earn a living elsewhere. So that is what we should do, Madam Speaker, even as we support this bill. But it's a very good bill. We support. This is also going to give Kenyans interest to apply to join NYS. You know, there are very many Kenyans who are not interested in joining NYS because they know it is not important for them. But when we pass this motion, Mr. Speaker, very many young people of this country are going to be interested. They will apply to join this paramilitary training center. And maybe as we progress in future, Mr. Speaker, we will bring in some amendments so that it becomes a very good law for this country. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support.
The Honorable Baraza, it's not yet a bill, it's still a motion. We hope that even you could take it up and come up with a proposal in a bill form. Very well, good contributions. We shall have the Honorable Ochieng Award, member for Migori.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was almost getting worried and coming to your desk to wonder whether my machine is actually working. I rise to support this motion, and I want to say that the essence of living is hope. When somebody has hope for the future, then they would see the need of doing something. It is actually harassing in this country since the beginning of this program of NYS. As my colleagues have pointed out, the government of Kenya has always used a lot of money. And as outlined here, that these people would be trained to acquire certain skills to participate in national development programs. But over the years, even as we stand here today, I know if I asked any of us from the constituencies where we come from, and from the counties where we come from, like Migori, which I represent here, if I ask somebody to tell me clearly what is the exact development program that the people who are being trained from NYS year in, year out are participating in, we will have very little to point out. And Mr. Speaker, this makes me think that actually this motion, which is suggesting a way of giving hope, a future hope for our young men and women who are recruited into NYS, would be a good thing to really think about and see how it can be implemented. Because I'm sure sometimes it has been assumed that some of these young people who are recruited into NYS could not make it academically to go to the either colleges or the university, and so the only thing they have may be the physical aspect of them. I want to say that having worked in the academia for a number of years, I know this is not true. When people are doing exams, sometimes things happen that somebody is not even able to get the mark that they were really targeting to get. Second to that, my colleague has just mentioned the concept of people with disability. If the matter is to give people skills, then it is true that even some people who cannot run may be having the ability to be trained to get those skills and still participate in development. So what I'm saying and suggesting is this NYS should just be like one of the avenues that our young people can follow also to progress to other higher aspects of life that their dreams may be inclined to. For those of us who have been keen, I think we should find even not only this military thing, but it is the most obvious because these people are given proper paramilitary training, and when they leave these camps, they are more of soldiers than even the skilled labor that we are talking about. But we have witnessed with a lot of dismay because the government, or we have had no plan as a country where to really take these people continuously, then most of the time these guys are actually used to harass people. Like during campaign election years, we witnessed in Migori County, men and women clothed in NYS clothes brutally killing innocent people. I think these people will not be that aggressive, they will not that be brutal if they had something significant to hope for and look for. I think because there is no exit, there is no continuity, they get misused at some stage. And I believe if we can provide an idea like this of encouraging the military, the police, to recruit and give these people a priority, it would be a good idea. For sustainability reasons, it is good to make sure that these people have something to look forward to so that they can keep progressing even in their skill until they reach the highest level of their participation. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion, but I would encourage that our government sees it fit and our concerned body sees it fit that the youth should be given a line of continuity so that there is sustainability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Ashira Kabinga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to support this motion, which I rise to do so. And I wish to thank the mover, Honorable Mushera, for bringing it up. Mr. Speaker, the recruitment of the youth in this country has been taken lightly. Yet this is a group that is at its very prime stage, Mr. Speaker. We recruit so many, they go for training for 6 months just to come out, sometimes not...
Just hold on, the Honorable Kabinga. The Honorable Wanyonyi, the member for Westlands, I see him going out. He was next on my, but he's gone out. Proceed, the Honorable Kabinga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to say that the group that we do recruit as youth and train for 6 months, Mr. Speaker, could you protect me from member number 001?
You are protected. The Honorable Sankok, you had a chance to speak in the House, and I didn't see the Honorable Kabinga disrupt you. So allow him to also have a go at it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This group of young men and women trained for 6 months, Mr. Speaker, go for this training with a lot of enthusiasm. They go there hoping that they'll make up in their life and come out somewhat confused, Mr. Speaker, because when they come out after 6 months, they start coming to us to look for jobs after being trained and a lot of money being spent. Mr. Speaker, as a country, we need to take advantage of this group of young men and women who, when they report to the training centers, Mr. Speaker, can be given an opportunity to declare their interests, their career interests. They can be told to declare if they want to join the forces on reporting, Mr. Speaker, and the country has a chance to watch over these young men and women for 6 months before they can finally be recruited to the forces, Mr. Speaker. This will not only save the country a lot of recruitment funds, but also give an opportunity to have young men and women who will have interest in joining the forces from the word go. Mr. Speaker, you realize that when we recruit in police, in the army and others, Mr. Speaker, we get people who sometimes are simply looking for jobs and not people who have interest in serving in those areas. By turning to the youth who have reported to the youth camps and asking them to fill up forms to declare their interests early enough, we will be able to get people who have interest in serving this country in the forces, as opposed to people who are simply looking for employment and money. Mr. Speaker, we are aware that in the youth camps or in the youth training, young men and women are also given chances of selecting diploma courses like electrical and mechanical and others. And from this cadre again, Mr. Speaker, the forces who also recruit professionals can have a chance to also tap into this recruitment group where they can get them directly so that on completion, these youth can go direct to the forces again without having to have the forces go back into recruitment. And we are aware, Mr. Speaker, that recruitment into our forces have been dogged by a lot of irregularities and corruption, Mr. Speaker. And so by tapping into the youth, we will be recruiting or having a process of recruitment where our youth will not only have a continuity from that training of as a youth to the forces where they are expected to pursue their career of interest, Mr. Speaker. With these few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support this motion and also urge the Ministry of Youth, Mr. Speaker. They started so many programs like in Mwea, where they left our children confused because these programs started and stopped without any sustainability or even without any direction. So we have so many youth there who are working and working with the National Youth Ministry, but now as we talk, they don't even know what to do next because they were left and there was.
The Honorable Bayer, member for Kilifi North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Mr. Speaker, I rise to, with hesitance, really oppose this motion. You know, the recruitment of members to the disciplined forces, if you look at what NYS is today and the membership, unless the motion mover really gives us the statistics that shows regional balancing, proper regional balancing, that each region is well represented in NYS, then we would say, yes, we would want to adopt that kind of method. But as it were, it is skewed negatively towards certain region. And because of that, you realize that this motion can be used as a way to corrupt people into NYS, into the disciplined forces through the NYS. We know the statistics available that there are certain regions that have more people in NYS than others, are not proportional to the populations in this country. And therefore, a motion like this would be used as a way to create a link into the disciplined forces for other communities and leave other communities out. What NYS needs to do is to restructure. We have a very successful NYS in Tanzania where you have the Force for Vijana wa Kujenga Taifa, which has a lot of transitions within it, and that these people continue to be within that disciplined force, which is equivalent to an NYS, up to retirement. What we need is the NYS needs to be restructured and changed so that the purpose for which these people are recruited is not just for them to be trained and they leave, but to be trained and employed within NYS until retirement. But if that will not happen, and I will urge the move of this motion to look at the NYS Act and change it so that it is not just about NYS, but it is about a place where youth are trained, they are given opportunities to serve the nation until retirement within the force. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Shall we have Honorable Lasso Ali, member for Saku?
Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion, and I strongly support it on the grounds that it will open up Pandora's box in that it addresses the issue of youth more than anything. Because in this country, in both motion number 9 on the establishment of sports academies and this one, we are addressing the issue of youth. As a country, we experience a youth bulge, where the population of this country, 60 to 70% is youth. The question that we as legislators, we must ask ourselves, what do we do with this youth? We must equip them with the right skills, and they must be employed. Currently, the National Youth Service is not the destination of choice for most of our young people, because after National Youth Service, what happens? They'll just go back to their villages and homes without any gainful employment. I want to thank the honorable member who brought this motion. And without casting aspersion on it, we must build on it as members to say, how do we build on this motion so that we even take it back to the ministry concerned, with the help of we, the members of the National Assembly, to come up with a bill on how the National Youth Service can be integrated in the wider job market. We should not limit it to only the disciplined forces. Actually, we must say that disciplined forces and all government agencies, Of this, I'm talking about even the departments. Mr. Speaker, the genesis of NYS, actually when it was founded, it was to provide an available reserve force for the Kenya Defense Forces. That was the genesis of it. But it never took the grounding from that point, because for many years, the KDF was not able to recruit directly from the NYS. I want also to say a few things. It does not reduce the training period. It does not reduce the recruitment cost. What actually it does, it brings a body of disciplined young men who are already tuned to a structured, organized way of thinking into the disciplined forces or any other government establishment for that matter. Mr. Speaker, in other countries, they use what we call conscription, where all young men and women between the age of 18 to 22 are taken into the disciplined forces. From that point, they have a card that actually gives them access to all the opportunities available in their country. Mr. Speaker, as members of parliament, as we walk around or we visit different destinations in the world, the rest of the world, particularly in the West, they have problem with the youth or the available workforce that can actually enter the job market. We as Kenyans, we must take advantage of that. Finally, Mr. Speaker, from my own county of Marsabit, I want to thank the Horn of Africa Development Initiative. They were able to take 4 youngsters to the World Cup in Moscow. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Before I give the next one, what is out of order on Abwanga? You seem to have pressed the intervention button.
Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to contribute.
Yes, you will contribute, but that is not the way to catch the speaker's eye. But you'll get a chance. I can see you on the screen. So before we come to you, let's have Honorable Member for Lulambi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I should be like Honorable Wanga one of these days to make sure that I can also catch your eye. I want to sincerely thank the Honorable Member Michael Mshira and support his motion on the issue of the National Youth Service graduates. Mr. Speaker, even during the days of President Moi, and those who can remember the days when we had A-levels, we had young people, both students, girls and boys, when they would go through O-level and A-level, they will have an opportunity to go to the NYS, and from there, they would find their way into their career. Many will go into the universities. Others will go into other institutions and then become professionals. Honorable Speaker, what we see today in the current NYS is not what was there in those days, and I think is not the intent of NYS, what the intention was when you look at it right now. And that's why I support the Honorable Mshira in that we need to give priority to graduates that graduate from the National Youth Service, because number one, when they go there, service is their priority. They don't go there for money. And as one of the members spoke before, today when we look at the disciplined forces, we are people who are thinking this is the only place where they still employ. This is the only place where you have the assurance that once you are recruited, you can earn a salary. So you have people that are joining the disciplined forces not because they have a call to serve the country, but because maybe that is the only available career, Honorable Speaker. And that's why the young men in NYS, they are there for service. And Honorable Speaker, it is a shame that the once celebrated service, the once celebrated program has become a disgrace in this country because of the scams, because of the corruption, because of the looting. And to bring to an end, this has to be changed whereby even the money that is wasted today by a few individuals taking the money, that money can be used to do a good recruitment program, a good training program, rather than politicize NYS, Honorable Speaker, whereby maybe it is done for political purposes. They come into the villages and say, we are giving work to the young people for them to clear the roads. And, you know, and then when they train, after they are done with the training, what happens? They come back home, and there's nothing that is done. Honorable Speaker, in the past, we even had buses, NYS buses, that plied on the roads, offered even a more reasonable fare to the citizens of this country. I remember in my town of Kakamega, NYS buses used to come all the way to Kakamega. So we can make this profitable to our young people in this country, clean up the mess that is there right now, because as it is, Honorable Speaker, it's horrible. And also being a bishop, I think NYS needs me to go there and pray for them. We need to clean and chase the demons that are in NYS, because every scam, NYS, every scam, NYS. I think, Honorable Sankok, you will join with me, you know, you'll join me when we go to Gilgil and all those places and pray and kick out the devils, and make sure you have an envelope for an offering for me. So I won't take you for free. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to support this motion and say it is time that proper measures are put in place, that this program can support young people, and young people can be recruited, because actually their motto is service and not just a salary. So I support the motion.
Before getting to my right, shall we have a member for Homa Bay?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank very much Honorable Mushira for introducing this very important motion. I think what bothers all of us is when NYS transformed into this 5-point plan and increased the number of youth from, I think, about 6,000 in a year to right now about 21,000 in a year, everybody is worried about where the youth who come from NYS are going with the paramilitary training that they have and all the other skills that they have. They come back into the villages. Mr. Speaker, if you ask youth to come to NYS now, in the last recruitment, in fact, you can really look for youth to go to NYS, because many people now shun NYS. They do not want to go because they don't know where they're going after NYS. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this is an important motion in terms of defining a career path from our youth whom we take to NYS. But, Mr. Speaker, as has been mentioned by previous speakers, NYS has now become a disgrace. It has become an eyesore. It has become the face of corruption, the face of all the things gone wrong. I think we will be worried about how this kind of recruitment will happen if if a radical surgery does not happen at NYS to rid NYS of the corruption it is known for currently. Mr. Speaker, we will not pretend and bury our heads in the sand that NYS is the great place to go and so on. So first of all, we must deal, and we here means this house that appropriates money to the NYS, the Committee of Labor and Social Welfare, where I sit, that oversights NYS directly, where Honorable Mushira and I actually sit, that oversights NYS directly. We must sit with NYS, and we must agree on what is going to be the new path for NYS so that we rebuild confidence in NYS. But, Mr. Speaker, what Honorable Mushira is proposing is actually not new. This parliament, the last Parliamentary Service Commission actually got our youth from NYS to come and do some work here in Parliament, the security, the people at the gate, you know, the people who do searching of the cars and so on. These are youth from NYS. One was picked from every county. They came here, they did interviews, they came here, and now they're doing this work, and we hope they can transition. So I think this has already begun, and it can actually be taken further. Mr. Speaker, but there has to be a merit system. It cannot just be that any youth that goes through NYS finally transitions into the disciplined forces. There has to be a system of merit where we know that these are the most meritorious, or whatever that English is, youth, and therefore number 1 to 30 will then transition into the disciplined forces. So it cannot just be random, it cannot just be taken, you know, from every source. So when this is going to be done, and I want to encourage Honorable Mushira, because there are acts of parliament governing NYS and even the disciplined forces, we should look at where to make strategic amendments. Now that your motion is going to go through the floor of this House, let us look for those strategic amendments, let us make them so that we develop a system of merit, and these particular youth who will be qualified will then transition, so that discipline pays for something. Mr. Speaker, you know that previously, I don't know whether they're in this House, but those who were to go to the university went through NYS before. I mean, before, in those earlier times, I think we have some on the floor, in this House who actually went through NYS to be able to go to university. And the discipline that is instilled through this process cannot be gainsaid. So, Mr. Speaker, overall, I'd like to support this motion very much and thank the Honorable Mushira for this very important and innovative motion. Asante.
Very well. Shall we now have Honorable Yusuf Halima? Use order member. Use the next one. Could be better.
Kosawa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this motion on prioritizing recruitment of National Youth Service graduates into the disciplined forces. Mr. Speaker, we know that the recruits that go through the training are usually stay there for 6 months, and the aim is usually to produce mature and responsible young citizens. Mr. Speaker, during the training, the recruits undergo parade drill, physical exercises, and the emphasis is usually patriotism and nationalism in outlook and approach. The discipline usually helps train a person's mind, character, and builds a sense of self-control and practice of obedience. Mr. Speaker, as we know, many youths join the National Youth Service at the age of between 18 and 26. This is the same age bracket for joining the disciplined forces, and that means if one joins the National Youth Service at the age of 26, chances are that they will never have a chance of joining the disciplined forces because that is the last entry age. Mr. Speaker, that means we spend taxpayers' money to train youth who can easily join some dark forces like the Al-Shabaab, Mungiki, and other outlawed movements. Mr. Speaker, the National Youth Service trainees are in a position to transition easily, considered that they have already undergone the vigorous training, and it is for this reason that I strongly support that they be given the opportunity to join the disciplined forces. Mr. Speaker, as we know, the National Youth Service is currently under the CS, Professor Kobia, who I can remember very well. When she was in the Kenya School of Government, she helped to transform the Kenya School of Government from what it was when it was the Kenya Institute of Administration. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe we can trust the CS, Professor Kobia, to change the National Youth Service and also to help us have trust, so that when our youths join the National Youth Service, we are sure that all will go well, and that what has been happening currently, the corruption, we can be sure with Professor Kobia, things might be able to change. Therefore, by prioritizing of the national youth graduates to join the disciplined forces, we'll be able to reduce corruption that is usually experienced during the recruitment to the disciplined forces, as is usually experienced. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support. Thank you.
Very well. And the next one in my screen here is Honorable Gakuya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on the motion towards prioritizing recruitment of NYS graduates. Mr. Speaker, youths are the most volatile team within this country, and I think over 70% of youths are totally jobless, and especially here, Nairobi, as I represent one of the Nairobi constituencies. The headache we have is how to deal with these jobless youth, because you understand very well that, in fact, the environment of Nairobi is not where there is anything for free. From anything to drink or anything to eat, you have to get back to the pocket. So at least there is importance to think on how we can be able to incorporate these youths somewhere that, in fact, they can be able to get their daily bread. I support this motion that, in fact, is an opener that, in fact, after training of 3 good months, Mr. Speaker, it is very important to give assurance to the livelihood of these youths. And when these youths graduate without anywhere necessarily that they can be seconded to, in fact, it's a big deficit, because when these youths are well trained, and some are trained in those kinds of skills of military skills, they are without anywhere that they can be supported to. Actually, they can turn against and become against the society. So it's of a good need that, in fact, the government think on how to move forward and do better than what it's doing, taking the youth training and also giving them areas of where they can be able to be absorbed. There are many areas, Mr. Speaker, where the government can take charge and absorb these people. We have areas like building of roads. We have areas like building of dams. We have areas like building of water pads. And all these areas, Mr. Speaker, it is not casted on a stone that, in fact, every other project in this country must undergo the procurement processes just for those tenders to be taken by individuals. But the government is capable of making separation of areas where these youths can undertake. It is very true that, in fact, they have equipment in their custody. Those equipment, most of them are lying idle there. So this equipment can be used, and they can be able to create work for these people. So I support that, in fact, not only looking how to incorporate these particular youths to what we call the other forces, because what we need also to understand, Mr. Speaker, is that we have our recruitment processes where the other forces normally also do their recruitment. And these recruitments are keenly through what we call agreed numbers. So you may find a situation where it will be difficult also to second them. But in fact, I would say there can be a registration which can be able to give a window on what number, what qualification can be able to assure somebody from that particular training of NYS and can be accepted to other forces. Mr. Speaker, I think this is a noble idea, and in fact, it's very important to take seriousness in terms of how do we take the next level of our youth. Because failure to that, Mr. Speaker, youth will become very difficult to handle within our society. And I think, Mr. Speaker, in those few remarks, I support the motion. Thank you.
Honorable Kitty Chonga, member for Kilifi South. Okay, he has taken leave. Okay. Next is Honorable Odege Boya, member for Nyatike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Protect me from Sankok. Ole Sankok. Allow me to highlight a number of issues which are compelling me to support this motion. When we look at youth training in this country, and we look at the numbers we are training in this country, you'll agree with me that NYS is number 2 after our universities. A training where 26,000 youths are being accommodated is something we cannot take for granted. And if there are shortcomings, I think it's our responsibility as the House to see how we can fix them and make that institution to work. Currently, we are giving our youth in NYS paramilitary training. When you look at the training we are giving our youth and the current training we are giving our youths who are joining military, there is no difference. This one brings me to talk about the planning and the budget of this country. Why do we do one thing twice and we fund it differently? My colleagues talked about representation in NYS, and I can prove it here, that the only training institute we have in this country where all corners of this country are represented is NYS. This is the only recruitment where every constituency is given its rightful share, every Kenyan is getting room to participate, and our youths are accommodated there. So I don't see why we should sit back and see military doing the same training and doing the same recruitment when we are wasting the youths and talents in these institutions. I would urge this House, and especially the Committee for Labor, to pick from this motion, and we come up with a very clear model on the training of youths in the military and disciplined forces. It's a waste of public funds to train youths and dispel outside. Then again, we allow military to come and recruit other youths and give the same training and employ in the military or disciplined forces. It's important for us as the House to agree, Mr. Speaker, that those who are going to be recruited in our forces are those who are undergone the training of NYS, so that we avoid paramilitary training again. They start from where they left at NYS. It will save the country, and it will make the youth of this country to be treated fairly. Currently, those who are discharged from NYS, I agree with the mover of the motion that as a country, we don't know where these youths are. And we are currently suffering issues of insecurity. After giving someone paramilitary training and you don't know where they are, we might be training robbers in this country and we don't know. So it's important we plan for NYS, and we again plan on where we want to dispel these people, where we want these people to be settled, as opposed to training them and we leave them to whom it may concern. This one is, we are doing a disservice to this country, and we are doing double budgeting for training over issues which you can streamline and come up with a very clear model whereby when you go through NYS, you know from NYS you are going to either police, you are going to either army, you are going to either NYS, you are going to either Kenya Forest Service, as opposed to the current situation where we are facing in this country. I support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Next is Honorable Nanok Epuyo. You had translocated yourself. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You have the floor.
Thank you for the chance. Speaker, I would wish to support this motion, but if it can be done differently. Speaker, the thinking around NYS, the objectives, the goals to be achieved, the reason why, the underlying reasons why NYS was established as an institution in this country is not the same as the reason why the military and the uniformed or the armed forces are formed. So on that basis, Speaker, I rise to oppose this motion. On the understanding that our youth really require continuity of programs that target them, particularly for purposes of employment. And so we cannot.
Order member, what is it? Danita, Honorable Danita, you pressed the intervention and quickly removed it. Yes, you have the floor. Please continue.
Thank you, Speaker. I hope that gives me more minutes. So, Speaker, I was saying that the reasoning that went into the establishment of the NYS, and by the way, Speaker, I'm a graduate of the NYS training, what we used to call the pre-university training, which took 3 months. And it was a good training, but it doesn't prepare you to become a military officer. When the military recruits anybody, they have their own curriculum, program, and by the philosophy that is instilled into that particular officer in order to perform particular tasks required of them. That is not similar to NYS. They are different. NYS is created, mainly it was a civil institution where Kenyans were prepared, young Kenyans were prepared to participate in the development of this country, building roads, building dams, or water pans, and such like civil works. There is the paramilitary training bit, the drills, the discipline, the order, that is okay. But it is not what is done in the military. So, Speaker, we need to really look at our programs again in this country. Sustainability of the programs is what I see to be the challenge here, Speaker. I remember what happened again in the mid-80s, early 90s, where mid-level colleges were being turned into campuses, university campuses, thereby leading to the collapse of those mid-level graduates, the diploma holders, the technical diploma graduates, just because we wanted to have everyone get a degree. And now with the degrees that we flooded the market with, and there are no jobs. Speaker, that is the challenge I have with this motion. Otherwise, the issue that we should be dealing with as a parliament, as a country, is the unemployment aspect in this country, in our youth. We need to get programs that are going to be sustainable. After this 6 months training, 3 months training in NYS, then these officers need to be given something that will sustain their lives in form of employment, but not to transition them into become military, police officers and what have you, because the doctrines are different. So with those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to oppose.
Next is Honorable Muri Fabian, member for Kangudo.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I also like to appreciate Honorable Mushira for bringing this motion ahead, which is important for our youth. Honorable Speaker, NYS, it is established with the Act of Parliament of 1964. It has modeled our youth in a disciplined manner. It has brought organized manpower in this country. The phenomena in NYS has given us welders, carpenters, and the people to work in security guards with education from security like military trainings. Honorable Speaker, I'm going to put the attention to this parliament that the institution in 1IS, it is established within the law. It is with the compliance with the law. So this institution, despite that it has been beaten with a lot of challenges, a lot of heated debates on public domain, it has really helped the society. Mr. Speaker, we have cartels. We have ghosts which are attacking this institution. This institution, Mr. Speaker, is going to be finished by a ghost. The ghost is eating with us. The ghost is working with us. The ghost is within us. But we don't know where the ghost is. And this ghost, it has made a debate that this institution to be disbanded, which is very wrong, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this institution, having helped too many Kenyan youth, and too many, historically, we have people when they used to go to Form 5 and Form 6, they used to pass through this institution. We cannot accept anybody to damage this institution. And Mr. Speaker, on supporting this motion, which is purely talking about putting our youth in front in terms of to be considered. Mr. Speaker, this motion is putting our youth to be considered as in front when you are being recruited people to join the police, to join the military and another organization. It is not saying that our youth to join direct. It is saying that we put them in front. So I don't see any reason to opposing this motion. These are the motions which need to be implemented because these people train with paramilitary training. They are going to the society and they don't have a job. They become a security threat, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is the high time. Also, we need to have a task force to control some of the major institutions for this country which are going to lose the reason of establishment. The NYS needs a task force to make sure that that ghost which sits there is not more there. Also, Mr. Speaker, on matters of national value, we need NYS in terms of procurement. When the procurement is done in the national central unit, that's where we have the corruption. But we want this NYS to be restructured according to the county government. Mr. Speaker, we want NYS in every count. When we say our youth to be P1 in terms of jobs and recruitment, we need it to capture the whole jurisdiction of our country. We need these institutions, their procurement to be procured in district level to avoid each huge procurement which attract a lot of corruption, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'd like to support this motion and say that it is the high time, we honorable members, we move ahead, spare anything, and do anything for the benefit of the youth in this society. And our Kenya future will go to second one, looking to go first one. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Shall we now have Honorable Shinali Masaka, member for Ikolomani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute on this motion by Michael Mushira. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that National Youth Service idea is very good. Going by what has been happening, Mr. Speaker, I want now this time to be the advocate for the table, because I have made inquiries to see how National Youth Service works. And Mr. Speaker, in the National Youth Service is the only place that people are recruited with the D+ and above, knowing very well what you are going to do, because you undergo training. After that, you choose courses which, Mr. Speaker, you qualify as per your O-level certificate or performance. Then, Mr. Speaker, you are distributed to different disciplines where you train, and through your training, you also help to build the country. Mr. Speaker, recently in my constituency, I wondered how Bushangala TTI has so many admission. Mr. Speaker, I realized that National Youth Service had sent there 100 youth who are undergoing training paid for by the government. I also inquired from Sigalagala National Polytechnic, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, we have 300 youth who are training there in different disciplines, and Mr. Speaker, also being paid for by the government. Mr. Speaker, my feeling is National Youth Service has to be restructured. The objective of National Youth Service is good. It's only a few individuals now who have taken up the running of National Youth Service, and they are pilfering money. Mr. Speaker, National Youth Service, we need to look at it in this House, amend the Act, make sure that there is no theft. Mr. Speaker, National Youth Service has produced a lot of people with a lot of technical knowledge. In our Juakali sheds, we find so many people working on lathe machine, working on different disciplines, including the motor vehicle mechanics, all are sponsored by National Youth Service. We need to encourage them so that we make use of all those TTIs that we are putting up. People who come through National Youth Service, Mr. Speaker, those are people who have need for training. Once it is advertised, people come willingly. And those ones who are going to discipline services, Mr. Speaker, know very well what they are going to do. Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't at this time confuse the two. We want our people, when they are going, our youth, when they are going to National Youth Service, they get the necessary training. We realize that in this country, we have a shortage of so many people who have technical knowledge. And this is the area where they can acquire that. By its own recruitment, Mr. Speaker, it tells us that these are youth who are poor, who come from poor background, and they're looking for training. And this is the only way they get that training. Let's encourage them to join National Youth Service and to get the necessary training that they require to serve this country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Before I give you Honorable Ole Sankok, David, shall we have Honorable Obo Muhammad, member for Lamu?
Asante Bwana Spika. Mimi nitaunga mkono, lakini pia tukiunga mkono wajue zile kaunti zingine ambazo pia NYS haijawekwa ndani hapo, au wengine wanapata kidogo. Sitakuwa na mengi ya kuzungumza sababu tunangojea hiyo motion nyingine ya Cashonat, lakini muhimu waangalie zile kaunti ambao ziko marginalized sije zikawa marginalized zaidi. NYS na wao wachukue kwa wingi, sio kutupatia ile kidogo, pengine watu 3, 4. Tunataka na sisi tupawe mgao wa kutosha. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Before I get to my left, Honorable Sankok.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. And Honorable Speaker, as Honorable Fabian had said, NYS was formed with an Act of Parliament of 1964, so it's an institution that have lived with us since independence, a very important institution, though docked with corruption instances, but we would like to request the government, and it is a polite demand to the government that they now strategize on how to end corruption in NYS, because it may end up denying our youth this very important service that is so important in this nation that we cannot do away with it. So we can only deal with corruption. Honorable Speaker, we are at a loss of how many parastatals that we have formed so that we can have good jobs of our relatives, our friends, sitting in boards, but all these parastatals are some of them dealing with one thing. In the training of youth, we have so many parastatals. We have the TVET, we have NITA, we also have NYS. Why can't we think of ways of combining all these parastatals so that the infrastructure that are there and the trainers that are there can offer the same services and under one particular board so that we can reduce the expense that we have as a country to maintain so many boards. Because sometimes these boards and these parastatals are created with an intention of political balancing and regional balancing and having jobs for our relatives, our friends, and those who supported us in politics. And for us, our intention is very clear, to make sure that our youth are trained in skills that can assist them in future. Honorable Speaker, I support the idea of our disciplinary forces getting or prioritizing the recruitment from NYS, because a person with paramilitary skill is actually a time bomb in a village. It is a time bomb in the middle of civilians. He is a time bomb in our meetings. You can imagine if you have a baraza kind of meeting and there is somebody who is trained in paramilitary. If there is any different in terms of land issues, you know, it can settle you very easily. This person is a time bomb in our bars, and that is why these forces normally have their own social amenities. Because when we are in social amenities with these people with paramilitary training, it is risky for some of us who may not know them. And when then it happens that there is a small commotion, you will realize these people need to be somewhere where they are actually restrained from mixing with civilian. Honorable Speaker, as members who have contributed have said, our youth who are trained with paramilitary skills have become gray areas and targets for radicalization by either Al-Shabaab, by Mungikis, by Chingororos, by Baghdad boys, and all those terror gangs. And even the robberies and other crimes that we are witnessing as a country, we may actually trace those roots to those who have been trained paramilitary. So, Honorable Speaker, and again, as we think about recruiting youth and NYS and later on recruiting them into the disciplinary forces, let us also think of persons with disability, because not all of them lack physical strength. There are persons with disabilities who are persons with albinism, who can really fit into these programs. There are those with hearing impairment who can really be very good in some of the skills, like sewing and plumbering and becoming electrician. You know, a person with hearing impairment is a best electrician because they don't have to talk with other people, they'll only deal with the machine. So, Honorable Speaker, I really do support this one, but corruption in NYS must end fast.
Very well. Honorable Edith Nyenze, member for Kitui West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to comment on this motion. Let me start by thanking the Honorable Michael Mushira for the motion. Actually, our youth are as frustrated after they leave NYS as the graduates from the universities, because likewise they also leave the universities and they have nowhere to go. So this is a good motion to consider the issues of the youth. So in addition to being observed in the disciplined forces, I suggest that the government can also ensure that the NYS graduates are observed elsewhere. Because actually the NYS may not have all the skills required in the disciplined forces. So my suggestion is that the government should come up with a policy to recruit all the graduates from the NYS, and this policy could include all government parastatals, government offices, so that there's a way in which there's a contract between NYS and government offices. And this one I'm saying because from my former employer, I remember a time when we required to have drivers, and we wanted to have a contract with NYS so that we can be having the drivers from NYS, a contract with NYS, but they said they do not have such arrangements. So that is why I'm suggesting that our policy, a government policy should be in place to have contract with government agencies, especially on outsourced services, whereby there can be a contract between NYS and government offices, especially for outsourced services like receptionists, where the physically challenged people can also be observed. We can also have contracts with government offices where drivers could be gotten from NYS, security guards, catering services, cleaning services. And in doing so, then we would observe so many of the NYS recruits. My suggestion is also that before the recruitment is done, and this also, I would also suggest it also goes to our government, to the universities. A need should be analyzed or research should be done whereby they would know how many receptionists are they going to recruit, how many drivers, how many security guards, how many would be required to do the dams, how many would be required to do the roads, so that after the recruitment, they will just be observed direct and they will get the employment direct instead of being trained and then they have nowhere else to go. So I actually support the motion, but with some amendments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Honorable Denise, I can see you, so just be a little patient. Still on my left, Honorable be the member for Masinga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning I want to stand to support this motion. I really was looking for this, Bwana Michael Mushira. This is timely because being a member of parliament, and especially when you are a new member of parliament, every young man looks upon you to be the employer the next day. And this has not happened. And therefore, having seen an opportunity in the NYS, and we encouraged them to go to the NYS. Since we were elected, they have been able to do 2 intakes. And I made sure I had meetings with them, and they have gone about 100 of them. 50 have already come out. And they're asking me, then Mheshimiwa, what is next? Now, my suggestion would be, and I would like to support what Mheshimiwa Michael Mushira has brought on the floor of the House, that we find a way of observing these young people, even if it's not in the military, all of them, but be able to put them in some of the ministries that they can be able to help. Because they come out with very good skills. I've been an employer for 34 years in the engineering sector. And the people that I employed from the NYS, they are very, very disciplined. They are there 8 in the morning, while others that I poached from other companies, they report there around 9:30. Therefore, to me, the NYS is doing a very good job. They train, first of all, they discipline the young people. And after that, they give them the skills. And especially, that is a place where they grow up, their mind grow up, and they start thinking like grown-ups to be responsible in whatever capacity they are employed or wherever they are placed. And therefore, I would urge this House that we even change the name of NYS because it has been dented by the corruption. We can look for a better way of changing the name and rebranding so that people will not think that this is the same NYS that has a lot of corruption, because the young people are not corrupt. It's the people that are on the top. But the young people have gone there with a purpose, to be trained, to learn, and to come out as people. And it is very dangerous to have a person that has a knowledge in a village and he is doing nothing. He will become the teacher because it's the happiness of every parent, once a student has gone and has graduated, to continue with the learning or to continue working and bring something to this parent who has invested a lot of money in this child. And therefore, as the government has invested a lot of money in the NYS, and we should not let this money, this investment, go in the drains, having known that these young people can be used somewhere and they are very disciplined. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I support so that we can be able to come out with a methodology of rebranding the NYS and even finding a way that we can be able to support the graduates that come from the NYS. With those few remarks, I support.
Next, shall we have Honorable Lisa Chepkoril, member for Nakuru.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to also speak about this motion. And first, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to congratulate and to thank the Member of Parliament who brought this motion to this floor. Mr. Speaker, sir, I can remember very well that during those about 40 years ago, we used to have NYS as a transition method to any other institution. Mr. Speaker, sir, when we think of our youths, both girls and boys, or both men and women who are recruited to NYS, it is for a purpose. It is to prepare them to be ready to get into any other institution, Mr. Speaker, sir. So when I hear some members opposing to this motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, maybe because they feel they are marginalized during the recruitment of the NYS, I am happy that the mover of this motion has actually mentioned it, that there should be a proper procedure of recruiting the NYS recruits. These are the right people to join the discipline forces because they are already prepared mentally and even physically to finish their training in the discipline forces. Mr. Speaker, sir, I still believe that these people can be able to be taken by the discipline forces and even them to start their own businesses, Mr. Speaker, sir, because they are already prepared. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is a transition method to any other institution. And what I'm calling upon our honorable members in this House to support this motion is because the NYS should actually be given proper budget so that they maintain their trainings. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is the only way that our youths can be trained for them to be able to join any other force, any other trainings like the discipline forces, and maybe them to be encouraged to start their own businesses. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know our government has set aside some funds for the youth and for women. And I believe this is the right group. And I want to encourage them wherever they are, where they are listening to this motion today, that it will be easier for them to use this money in their own businesses, Mr. Speaker, sir. I am sure that once they are given a chance to join discipline forces, it will be one way of solving the problems of the youth in this country, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I really want to thank the Member of Parliament who brought this motion to this floor. I support it fully. And with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Gashofe, member for Subukia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving this chance to contribute on this motion of prioritizing recruitment on NYS graduate and prioritizing it. First of all, I wish to thank the honorable member and appreciate him for the noble idea he has brought to this house concerning our young youth who are lying idle there after they have been trained in the NYS. And to start with, the amount of money allocated to the NYS is a lot of money. And the training that these young people goes through is very important. But when they come out there, they are not absorbed anywhere. And therefore, I support knowing that the kind of skills that they have acquired, when they join the disciplined forces, they will not need much of the training because it's like enhancing what they have learned through or what they have gone through. And therefore, when given a chance, they can contribute so much in the forces. If you go outside there, so many youth nowadays are losing interest in joining NYS when they see their colleagues who have gone through the NYS just lying idle there. And therefore, I think this motion is a motivator to many of the young men who would want to join NYS. If they see some of their colleagues have joined the defense forces, they will be motivated more and they would want to join the forces. When we have disasters in this country, we see NYS are involved. And therefore, if they can join the disciplined forces, I think they can be given the role to join the disaster management team because they confirm to the Kenyans that when they are given these roles, they perform as patriots of this nation, and therefore they can pray it well. When they go outside there, we have young men and women who have been trained to be tailors, mechanics, carpenters. And therefore, I would ask even the government if they can allocate a little kitty to support these young men to start their own businesses and to make sure that the training they underwent can be of help to their futures when they start their own businesses. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would wish to disagree with those who are calling that we should do away with NYS. We should not allow our young men and women to suffer because of few corrupt individuals. The men are not corrupt, but those who have been charged with the responsibilities of seeing that the young men get training collapse away with their monies. And therefore, we should not allow our young men to suffer because of other people's. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I support.
Yes. What is it, Honorable Adipo? Oh, Honorable Adipo, you press the intervention and quickly remove it. You don't have the floor as yet, Honorable Adipo. It's just that you had pressed the intervention, and I thought you have a point of order. Very well.
Sorry, I just wanted to contribute, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Adipo, but that's not the route to do that. But order, Honorable Sankok, you cannot, you don't have the space to advise the Speaker. The Speaker has the wisdom. But Honorable Denita.
Mr. Speaker, thank you so much for this opportunity. You have been patient enough. Mr. Speaker, for me, there is a thin line between NYS, the paramilitary, and the disciplined forces, Mr. Speaker. And I want from the onset, Mr. Speaker, to say that I fully support this prioritization recruitment of NYS graduates into the disciplined forces. Mr. Speaker, growing up those days, I remember, Mr. Speaker, NYS was the in thing. Everyone who used to grow up, Mr. Speaker, during my time, always wanted to get into NYS. It was the in thing, Mr. Speaker, because the ideals and the ideas of NYS at that time were genuine and they were committed to the empowerment of the youth, Mr. Speaker. Graduates who complete university, who complete secondary school, Mr. Speaker, everyone wanted to get into NYS, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we are even discussing. Mr. Speaker, we have so many young people who roam our streets, Mr. Speaker, every day in search for employment, and they have nowhere to go. Mr. Speaker, I come from Migori, and if you are aware, Mr. Speaker, I represented that county as the women rep in the last parliament, Mr. Speaker. Right from Kisii, Rongo, Mr. Speaker, until the border of Isebania. Our young people roam our streets without jobs, without employment, without nothing, Mr. Speaker. And yet, our young people are graduates of NYS. Mr. Speaker, of what use is NYS if they cannot guarantee employment of our people, of our young people? Mr. Speaker, this is a motion that basically, Mr. Speaker, because we are not able to provide this employment that our young people who graduate from NYS, Mr. Speaker, need, there should be a requirement, Mr. Speaker, that even when our discipline forces are in our constituencies, are in the counties, Mr. Speaker, they should prioritize NYS training, Mr. Speaker, as #1 priority to join even the police force. Mr. Speaker, so that our young people can get out of their streets and provide for their families, Mr. Speaker. That, for me, Mr. Speaker, should be a requirement, and that is why I'm saying there is a thin line. We cannot say, Mr. Speaker, that there is NYS, our youth spend 6 months in NYS, and then they come to roam our streets. Mr. Speaker, that should be the first requirement when we are recruiting our youth to join the discipline forces, Mr. Speaker, and any other. These are young people who are trained in masonry, they are trained in carpentry, they are trained in welding. Mr. Speaker, isn't this an added advantage? Instead of graduating and coming, this here is a bunch of young people in the streets, and then now the discipline forces now is coming to recruit a new group of young people to go where, Mr. Speaker, and yet employment is a problem. Mr. Speaker, what we should actually be talking about is how to sanitize NYS so that it remains lucrative the way we grew up knowing NYS, Mr. Speaker, so that our youths can be able to feel comfortable. We have seen so many rich people and these cartels who are looking at NYS as an entry point. They're seeing NYS as the easiest point of embezzling funds, Mr. Speaker. And it is a shame that anywhere there is corruption, usually the channels and avenues of those corruption are the institutions that target the youths and young people and persons with disability. That is where now you find corruptions, cartels, finding their ways into those avenues, Mr. Speaker. We need to seriously address the issue of NYS to make it lucrative, Mr. Speaker, to our young people, because our young people are many. Kenya have so many young people, Mr. Speaker, who are looking for employment, and we don't have. What we can also, Mr. Speaker, and should be talking about is to look at the curriculum. How, for example, Mr. Speaker, is NYS curriculum, how different is it? Because if you look at the aims, Mr. Speaker, of NYS is to instill discipline, to instill, a sense of discipline within the young people, Mr. Speaker, so that they're able to be absorbed into the mainstream jobs and markets. What does the police force, for example, Mr. Speaker, do? They also instill discipline. So, Mr. Speaker, it is just a matter of transitioning. We need to transition and make sure that these NYS graduates, Mr. Speaker, who come back to our villages and hotels, Mr. Speaker, and counties, are usually the #1 requirement when the discipline forces is looking for youth to join the army, the KDF, the police, the whatever, Mr. Speaker. That is a requirement. That way we are able to ensure that we are transitioning our young people who do not get employment. Mr. Speaker, these are young people who do not get chances to get into institutions of higher learning like universities. Now they go to vocational centers, they get into NYS, they get into other areas. But Mr. Speaker, they are there with their skills. Mr. Speaker, there is not.
Very well, Honorable Member. Point made. Honorable Jared. Okay.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Speaker. Pia nataka.
My name is Jared Okelo. Well, thank you, Mrs. Speaker. I apologize the mix-up. Firstly, let me thank you for giving me an opportunity to delve into this most important subject. Additionally, thank the sponsor of the motion, Honorable Michael Mushira, for his wisdom to bring it forth. I rise to support it for various reasons, Mr. Speaker. The enormity of our country's current challenges and chronic unemployment within us point to the need to give young NYS-trained youths a chance to be recruited in the disciplined forces. Number two, Mr. Speaker, the already acquired paramilitary training by these recruits absorbed in the disciplined forces will allow exemptions in certain subjects and trainings and hence save this country enormous amount of money. Number three, the training acquired while at NYS, augmented with the trainings at the disciplined forces training centers, will assist in rebuilding infrastructure, installing green energy, restoring our environment, and helping during national disasters. Mr. Speaker, my constituency became a victim a while back when it rained so heavily. There was a great amount of deluge that affected most inhabitants of my constituency. I did not, as a matter of fact, see any intervention by NYS of which they ought to have, or the intervention of the national government to help us resettle and alleviate the sufferings of these most valued constituents. So I think with this, they will be in a better position to address national disasters within this nation. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the NYS-trained youths integrated within the disciplined forces would collectively break down barriers arising from extremes of wealth and poverty. And we have constantly seen that as a country. It will also help the many trained, desperate youth stay out of trouble that could lead to prison. And we saw a while back how dangerous indoctrinated youths can become, mostly at the coast and within Nairobi, when we saw and witnessed the amount of damage that were being caused by these indoctrinated gentlemen, of course not very gentle, within the Republic of Kenya. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, by offering them a chance, a greater stake in their country's future and their own, the intervention would show young people that they are valued and appreciated. Many of them train at the moment. They have those paramilitary trainings, but then get integrated within their communities without a livelihood, and hence causing real trouble to the communities where they come from. Finally, Mr. Speaker, it will address the disparity of having a tiny segment of our young people, mostly disadvantaged, serving the nation. This country is in desperate need of personnel to help rebuild not just the social broken fabrics, but also our economic endowments as a country. I therefore rise to support this most timely and important motion, Mr. Speaker. Once again, thank you for giving me an opportunity.
You know, honorable members, if we can be kind enough and just be brief, we can easily have even more members contribute within the remaining time. That is not a directive, it's not an order, but if you could be kind enough, just reduce, be brief, then we have a few other members getting the opportunity within the time remaining. I don't know why I have a feeling Honorable Ouda Odhiambo will be that brief.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for foreseeing that. Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity. I equally want to thank the member who has sponsored this motion to the House. It is timely. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will want to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, some underlying issues must just be put in place. Mr. Speaker, whereas we want to absorb these young men and women into the disciplined forces, we must also agree that there is a very big gap between disciplined forces training and what goes on in NYS. Hence, Mr. Speaker, sir, we must go back to the basics and ask what are the qualifications of joining NYS? What is it that they are required to do from the start, so that as you go along, we will know that these young people can then be absorbed into the disciplined forces. For example, Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to know, we need to put things in place, for example, like when somebody leaves primary school and they go all to class 8, or rather they go all through their primary education, are they qualified enough to join NYS? And if they are not, what are we supposed to do to make sure that we equip them with the necessary skills so that they can join NYS with enough education background? So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Government arms must be included so that we can absorb them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Well, yes, Honorable, you are not as brief as I expected, but that's fine. Honorable Jaldesa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I will follow your wise advice, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. I want to also join my colleagues in thanking the mover of this motion for bringing a very important motion. Mr. Speaker, I will not repeat what my colleagues have said. The importance of NYS cannot be overemphasized. Of course, it created job opportunities for youth. I'm happy when I visit the government offices. Sometimes I find youths from youth services there. When you go to the airport, you find the youths from the youth service manning the entrances. That is positive. I want to thank the government for that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that it is just that it is not in the public domain, and I want the government to make it public, because I have a letter in my email, where Kenya Airport Authority were recruiting a security warden from NYS. Mr. Speaker, the recruitment took place yesterday and I think today at Naivasha. Mr. Speaker, my concern is, as I support this motion, that this process of recruiting NYS should be as open, as transparent as possible. Mr. Speaker, why am I saying this? Only yesterday, Mr. Speaker, 2 of young ladies from my county of Isiolo were removed from the recruitment to the KAA because it was purported that they did not have the right qualification to join KAA. That leaves me wondering, Mr. Speaker, how in the first place they were recruited to NYS. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, as I support this, we must be very specific on the recruitment process into NYS. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, I want to add that, of course, the 2 girls who were removed were said to be having been a class 8 dropout. Mr. Speaker, it is not all counties which are the same. Some of us from, historically marginalized areas have challenges. For example, transition rates for girls from primary to secondary in my county of Isiolo is less than 10%, Mr. Speaker, and it is something that we are fighting. And if these few ones get an opportunity to be in this institution, Mr. Speaker, they should be considered. Therefore, with those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I want to support this very important motion. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Janet, if you could follow the same spirit of sharing time.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Pia ningependa kuchukua nafasi hii kumshukuru mwenzangu Mheshimiwa Mushira kwa kuleta mjadala huu katika bunge hili kuhusu watoto wetu wale wameenda kwa huduma ya vijana. Nataka niseme hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, ni ukweli sisi hutoa watoto kutoka sehemu mbalimbali kuingia katika huduma huu, ni kwa sababu tunataka pia wakuwe na mahali pa kukaa ama mahali pa kufanyia kazi. Na vile mwenzangu amesema hapa hivi, kwa wale wamehitimu wajiunge pamoja na kitengo cha usalama. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ninaona hiyo ni jambo la muhimu sana. Na sio tu kitengo cha usalama, hawa vijana wanaweza kujiunga kwa vitengo vingine vyovyote katika nchi yetu ya Kenya. Na mimi ninajua vile mwenzangu kutoka Isholo amesema mahali hapa, ni ukweli hapa awali walikuwa wanachukua watoto wale wamefika katika kidato cha 8, lakini mwishowe wakaenda wakasema kwamba wachukue kutoka kwa kidato cha 4. Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka niseme ni jambo mzuri sana iwapo sisi pia viongozi pamoja na serikali tutasikizana kwa lengo moja ya kusema kwamba vijana wetu hawa wapewe kazi na sio kwenda kupata mafunzo na mwishowe warudi wakae nyumbani. Nataka niseme hivi Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu tumekuwa na maneno mengi katika NYS, ile ninajua kwamba imekuwa ni changamoto na sio hapa tu, kwa sababu wengi wanaongelea juu ya ufisadi, na ufisadi sio kwamba imelenga NYS peke yake, imepatikana katika sehemu mbalimbali katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, na kama viongozi tutasimama kitete kuhakikisha kwamba nchi yetu haitatumbukia mahali pabaya, mbali itumbukie mahali pazuri. Na niseme asante Mheshimiwa Spika, na nimuunge mwenzangu na wenzangu pia tuunge mkono mjadala huu. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Now, I can see top of the list here, Honorable Adagala, Honorable Tunoi, Honorable Idikiri, and the time for the mover to reply is actually now, and even on Honorable Mushira, if you could be kind enough, you cannot donate a minute to each as you so wish. Do you want to go with Honorable Adagala, give her a minute? Maybe to Noi, I can see your neighbor there is nodding also, Honorable Munene, but Honorable Adagala, you have a minute, donated by the mover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this a few minutes, and the mover, Honorable Michael Muchira. I want to support this motion whereby we absorb our NYS graduates into the disciplined forces. One, these people have at least gotten a paramilitary training, which is basic, that can assist them as they join these disciplined forces. They're able to discard their duties very well. One thing I would say, the NYS at least instill discipline in people, and our youth are all over in the country without jobs. They have no trainings. So once this incentive is given, that a person will know, once I join the NYS, I'm able to join the...
To this important motion. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate my colleague, Honorable Muchira, for coming up with this motion. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I want to say that I support the motion, prioritizing recruitment of NYS graduates into the disciplined forces. I support, but with some bit of amendments, Mr. Speaker. This train idle youths is a time bomb, as it has been said by my colleagues. There is no point of equipping our youths with paramilitary training and just...
Very well. Who is that person you had donated to?
I think it's...
Mover. Who was that person?
I'm just next to him.
Oh, you seem to have bullied the mover, but anyway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance, and I wish to, first of all, thank Honorable, and they fight.
Very well. Honorable Michael Mushira, the mover, please reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honorable members for their valuable contribution. I also want to urge the implementation committee, once this honorable house passes this motion, to ensure that it is implemented. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Very well, honorable members, we shall ped putting the question to that particular motion. Very well. Honorable members, the time being 2 minutes after 1 p.m., this House starts adjourned till today, Wednesday, 27th June 2018 at 2:30 p.m.